Chapter 835. I once used the identity of the White Knight Demon King to wreak havoc in the original box court. I used the identity of the human final trial to wreak havoc in the box court. Putting down the teacup in his hand, White Yiksha began to explain seriously. But due to the development of science, humans gradually understood incomprehensible phenomena and existences. For example, humans understood that the heaven-shaking theory was wrong. Correspondingly, White Yiksha's strength was greatly weakened. After my heaven-shaking theory spirit lattice was exploited, I was defeated and finally converted to Buddhism. From this, it could be seen that although humans were weak, humans had a great influence on powerhouses who were restrained by legacies. Then, White Yiksha, will you become an enemy of humans? Wuming wasn't concerned about whether White Yiksha would become an enemy, but he was worried that White Yiksha would be suppressed if he became an enemy. The so-called human final trial was for humans to train. This meant that humans would be defeated in the final trial. Oh, are you concerned about me? White Yiksha narrowed his eyes with a sneaky smile. After all, they were friends, so he was naturally worried. However, Wuming didn't want to admit it when he saw White Yiksha's smug face. I'm considering whether to plan ahead on how to kill you, Wuming answered without hesitation. That's a pity. Due to the heaven-shaking theory being unraveled and my conversion to Buddhism, my rights to the human final trial have stopped. But then, White Yiksha's tone changed. However, if I return the Godhead and retrieve the spirit lattice, the rights to the human final trial can still be reactivated. Is that so? Wuming nodded. This was one of the reasons why White Yiksha didn't retrieve the spirit lattice to fight the Demon King 3 years ago. However, if it really comes to that, I will have no choice but to return to the upper levels of the box court. Even if White Yiksha didn't want to return, the people in the upper levels of the box court wouldn't let a two-digit box court powerhouse stay in the lower levels. Although White Yiksha would only think for the people in the lower levels by staying in the lower levels, once this precedent was set, it would be troublesome for other powerhouses to run to the lower levels in the name of being the ruler of the social class. Don't doubt it. Some people like to be a local tyrant. But if you leave, it will be quite troublesome. Wuming looked helpless. If I leave, I will recommend you to be the ruler of the Eastern District. White Yiksha did not hide anything. In fact, when White Yiksha promised Wuming that he would protect the East District and, no name, even if he had to return the Godhead, White Yiksha had already made up his mind. I don't want to be the ruler of the hierarchy and cause trouble every day. There's no other way. I can only put in more effort to make you obediently stay at the bottom. Looking at Wuming's appearance, White Yiksha could not help but laugh. Since you've said so, it seems that I can only do as you say. Then, the two returned to the main topic. Other than the earth-shattering theory, there are many other theories about the last embryo, such as dystopia, wandering endgame, absolute evil, and so on. But White Yiksha paused. Basically, these demon kings of the last embryo are no longer a threat for the time being because of the various measures taken by the people of the box court. Therefore, White Yiksha did not think in this direction. You said it yourself that it's only temporary. Galji and the others might want the last embryo to reappear, Wuming asked. For example, human evil. When he saw Absolute Evil's clone, White Yiksha had said that Absolute Evil had been sealed. But the community in charge of guarding Absolute Evil's seal told me that the seal is intact and no suspicious people have been found recently. After experiencing the attack of Absolute Evil's clone, White Yiksha immediately contacted the manager. Moreover, ever since No Name sealed it 200 years ago, the seal has always been perfect and has never been broken. Oh. Absolute Evil was sealed by No Name 200 years ago. Wuming really did not know about this. After all, No Name was once the largest community in the East District. Naturally, it had some glorious results. White Yiksha shook his head matter-of-factly. Looking at White Yiksha's smug expression, those who did not know would think that White Yiksha was the one who sealed absolute evil. If that's the case, the place where absolute evil was sealed is probably related to No Name. Now, it was still managing the seal of absolute evil. It was probably an ally of No Name 200 years ago. That's right. The community managing the seal of absolute evil is an ally of No Name, White Yiksha said slowly, then looked into Wu Ming's eyes. The current 5-digit community in the North District, Salamandra. Wu Ming was deep in thought. Long ago, Wu Ming had guessed that Galji and the others had attacked the outer gate of the 54545 for some reason. The reason why he only suspected this was simple. The East, South, West, and North districts had all been attacked by absolute evil's avatars. The West district was not attacked a second time. The South and East district were attacked a second time in the same place. Only the North district was attacked a second time in a different location. Wu Ming originally had some guesses about this. With a series of clues and the fact that White Yiksha said that the place where absolute evil was sealed was the headquarters of Salamandra, perhaps Galji and the others really did something in the outer gate of the 54545. However, the conditions for unsealing the seal of absolute evil are very special. White Yiksha's next words attracted Wu Ming's attention. Very special. Then, White Yiksha extended a finger. First, you must have sun sovereignty. Sun sovereignty. Wu Ming's expression changed slightly. It was unknown if he thought of something bad. What's wrong? White Yiksha noticed the change in Wu Ming's expression and asked kindly. Nothing. Speaking of which, sun sovereignty should be very difficult to collect, right? Wu Ming shook his head and continued the current topic. No matter where the sun was or which world it was in, it was a crucial deciding factor. There were tens of thousands of god groups in the box court world, and each god group had an existence related to the sun. Therefore, in order to take care of the many powerhouses related to the sun, sun sovereignty was divided into 24 portions. However, if I remember correctly, you should have more than half of the sun sovereignty, White Yiksha. It was said that White Yiksha had 14 sun sovereignty. In that case, there were only 10 suns scattered outside. However, 10 sun sovereignty was not enough for hundreds or thousands of god groups. However, although that was the case, if it was someone from the upper echelons of the box court behind Galji, it was reasonable to have 1 or 2 sun sovereignty. However, White Yiksha's next words shocked Wu Ming again. Not only do I have multiple sun sovereignty, but my enemy also has multiple sun sovereignty, and there are 6 of them. In that case, wouldn't there be only 4 sun sovereigns left outside? In that case, sun sovereignty was even rarer. It was no wonder that it was a condition for unsealing. Even so, having sun sovereignty was still one of the conditions. The second condition for unsealing is the Star Sea Dragon King's horn. Wu Ming knew about this. The Star Sea Dragon King was Shidora's ancestor. It was said that the horn on Shidora's head was transplanted from the Star Sea Dragon King, and it was a horn with great power. However, the Star Sea Dragon King's horn is currently on Shidora's head in perfect condition, Wu Ming said. He had just met Shadora. Shidora's horn was still bright and beautiful, and there was no damage at all. It was impossible that someone had secretly replaced Shidora's entire horn. No matter how weak Shadora and Salamandra were, it was impossible for them to be that weak. Are there any other conditions? Wu Ming was more or less relieved. There is a third condition, which is the last one. White Yiksha's expression became serious. Seal the flag of the community of absolute evil. Chapter 836. Hearing this, Wu Ming could not help but narrow his eyes. The flag of the community that seals absolute evil, wasn't that the flag of No Name? That's right, it's the flag of No Name, White Yiksha said with certainty. So, my guess was right. Wu Ming said subconsciously. What did you guess right? White Yiksha looked at Wu Ming in confusion. This had nothing to do with what she said, right? I always feel like you've been hiding something from me. Facing White Yiksha's suspicious gaze, Wu Ming could not help but laugh. How could that be? Cough cough. Let's call it a day. At this moment, Wu Ming seemed to be in a relaxed state. Wu Ming's sudden relaxed state made White Yiksha begin to complain. Don't be too relaxed. Although the Sun Sovereign is rare, if there's someone behind the other party, it's not impossible to get it. The Starseed Dragon King's horn is even more so. As for the flag of No Name, don't forget that 3 years ago, No Name was taken away by the Devil King. Combined with the information you provided, it's most likely those people. To put it simply, White Yiksha was quite worried about whether the other party would break the seal of absolute evil. Don't worry, the enemy can't do anything anymore. Standing up, Wu Ming stretched his body. But White Yiksha still wanted to refute, but Wu Ming immediately interrupted him. Alright, I've prepared a surprise for Ren and the others. I have to go back and prepare in advance. With a wave of his hand, black and purple ripples appeared beside Wu Ming. Do as you please. White Yiksha took a sip of tea in a fit of pique. Don't worry, White Yiksha. Wait until tomorrow, you'll know why I'm not worried that the seal of absolute evil will be broken. At that time, please take care of No Name. With another wave of his hand, Wu Ming plunged into the portal. The portal closed immediately. I'll know tomorrow. Take care of No Name. What do you mean? Bai Yiksha, who didn't like to keep people in suspense, complained unhappily. Then, he took out his gift card and prepared to take out some snacks to eat with the tea. However, like unpredictable fate, White Yiksha seemed to realize something as his eyes suddenly widened. Could it be? Looking at his reflection in the teacup, Bai Yasha smiled. So that's what you mean. There really is such a guy. He took out the desserts from the gift card and put away the gift card. White Yiksha held a teacup in one hand and a dessert in the other. Well, if that's true, then it's a happy ending. Then, White Yiksha took a bite of the snack. At the entrance of No Name's headquarters, a dark purple ripple appeared, and Wu Ming jumped out. Wu Ming had not walked through the main entrance for a long time, so he decided to walk through the main entrance. Have we arrived? Looking at the 2 huge magic puppets guarding the door in front of him, Wu Ming walked in without hesitation. They were not summoned by summoning tools like the magic puppets in the manor. These 2 huge magic puppets were high-level magic puppets that Wu Ming summoned from the inherent enchantment, Nazalik's underground tomb. If it was someone without authorization, the 2 gigantic magic puppets at the door would stop the person from entering. If they tried to force their way in, they would be attacked by the huge magic puppets. Of course, the magic puppets could only stop low-level tiger men like Jard. If someone like Maxwell tried to force his way in, these 2 magic puppets could only act as an alarm at best. In the end, they would have to rely on other people in the community. However, with these 2 magic puppets guarding the door, it felt quite cool. In short, it was better than nothing. Walking into the courtyard of No Name, Wu Ming saw a bright and beautiful scene. Different from the dilapidated scene he saw when he first walked through the main entrance, the scene Wu Ming saw now was completely different. The barren land became full of vitality, the originally dry river was filled with clear water, the seemingly broken house was renewed, and the courtyard that did not have any greenery was now full of vitality. Not bad. Wu Ming was quite satisfied with this. Although Wu Ming did not often wander around No Name, he was still a member of No Name. Wu Ming was happy to see No Name become better. Wu Ming was happy to see No Name become better. Moreover, when he thought about the things he successfully traded with Galji, Wu Ming's mood became even better. By the way, although I wanted to take Vera around before, it seems like I haven't been to No Name much myself. Wu Ming said as he walked around No Name. However, as Wuming walked around, he noticed that there was a problem not far away. Wuming quickly walked over and saw Pest and Vera confronting each other, while Lily stood at the side, not knowing what to do. Moreover, if Wuming was not mistaken, there was a hammer on the ground beside Pest. What happened? Wuming could not help but ask. Servillo. Lily's voice was full of surprise, as if Wuming's arrival had completely resolved the situation between the two. However, that was more or less correct. When Vera saw Wuming, her short little legs fluttered as she ran to Wuming's side and pulled on his sleeve. When Pest saw Wuming, his face paled even more. It seemed like he was still a little afraid of Wuming, but not as serious as before. What's going on? Wuming did not look at anyone but Lily. After all, the onlooker had a clearer view. I was bringing Vera around when we suddenly bumped into Miss Pest. Then, Vera attacked Miss Pest with a hammer, and then... Lily did not continue, but Wuming understood. After that, Pest probably sensed Vera's danger and did not attack her directly. Instead, they stared at each other and started a confrontation. From the looks of it, Wuming could more or less guess what had happened. Pest, are you hurt? As the victim, Pest naturally needed to be concerned. How could I be hurt by a mere hammer? I was just a little annoyed that I was suddenly attacked, and it was my head. Although Pest was touched by Wuming's kindness, he was still very afraid of Wuming, and his voice was filled with weakness. Since you're not hurt, you can leave first. Wuming knew that Pest was not hurt, so he did not question his words. I know. Pest said in an aggrieved tone. Then, he left without stopping, as if he didn't want to stay any longer. Lily, you should leave too. Please take care of Vera for me. How could it be troublesome if I can help Servillo? Lily smiled in response to Wuming. It's almost lunchtime, so I'll leave first. See you later, Servillo, Vera. With that, Lily left too. In the end, only Wuming and Vera were left. Alright, Vera, why did I attack Pest with, a hammer? Wuming squatted down and looked at Vera. Because I was interested. It was a very short answer, but it left Wuming speechless. Was it only because you were interested in Pest? Vera even showed a surprised expression when she heard Wuming's question. It was as if she was saying, if it wasn't because I was interested, then what else could it be? All right. Wuming sighed helplessly. As expected, there was no lack of problem children in this world. Just then, Lily suddenly ran back. Servillo. Everyone is back. Wuming's eyes lit up. Finally back. Chapter 837. No name, usual chat room cum meeting room. Although there was a realm gate and it wasn't a long journey, after leaving home for a long time, the first thing to do after returning was to rest. You're finally back. Jiu Fei now sat on the sofa and elegantly took a sip of the black tea she had just prepared. Fei Niao is indeed a young lady. Haruai Hayashi, who was sitting next to Jiu Fei Niao and stroking the three-furred cat, couldn't help but say. It's just a habit. Do you want to learn etiquette? I can teach you. Jiu Fei Niao seemed a little excited and looked at Haruai Hayashi as if she was offering her services. However, Haruai Hayashi shook his head. That's not necessary. She wasn't cut out to be a young lady. She preferred to spend time with her friends naturally. After all, Haruai Hayashi's personality isn't suitable. Ren, who was resting on the opposite side, said weakly. After spending some time together, the members of No Name had a certain understanding of Haruai Hayashi, this seemingly innocent but actually two-faced girl. Haruai Hayashi didn't care about Ren's words at all and even nodded in agreement. I think that as our No Name's mascot, Black Rabbit is very suitable for learning etiquette. Haruai Hayashi said as he looked at Black Rabbit, who was also resting on the sofa. The black rabbit, who was resting with its eyes closed, jumped up when it heard someone talking about it. Its ears also twitched. Black Rabbit also has etiquette knowledge, Yao-san. Although Black Rabbit's etiquette knowledge may not be as good as Miss Fei Miao's, he doesn't need to learn it. Black Rabbit had the title of a Hakata aristocrat. In addition, Black Rabbit had been a judge for a long time, so etiquette was necessary for Black Rabbit. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot, Black Rabbit. Haruai Hayashi covered his mouth and snickered. Yes, that's right. You didn't deny the identity of a mascot. Jiu Fei now didn't cover her mouth and snickered, but she also gave Black Rabbit a proud smile. Ren could only smile awkwardly. Teasing Black Rabbit had become a daily routine of no name. And no way, Black Rabbit is not a mascot. Black Rabbit, who was once again teased by the two of them, blushed. You two problem children don't always think about teasing Black Rabbit. Just as Black Rabbit was about to get angry, 16 Knights, who was standing by the window, suddenly spoke. It's so noisy. Black Rabbit, everyone just came back. Can't you be quieter? 16th Knight's solemn words entered Black Rabbit's ears, which made Black Rabbit lower its head in shame. I'm sorry. Of course, her face was still completely red, but this time, it was out of guilt. The others didn't say anything either, as if they were affected by 16th Knight's suppressed tone. However, at this moment, 16 Knights suddenly turned around. Speaking of which, didn't that Villo guy come back? Why can't I see him? 16 Knights didn't seem to be suppressing his emotions at all as he looked at everyone excitedly. The Black Rabbit was stunned. Who was the one who said to be quieter? It was as if Black Rabbit was hallucinating when he said that. After being separated for such a long time, I really miss him. No matter what, we should have a good fight. Ha ha ha. 16th Knight laughed, but his laughter sounded like mockery to Black Rabbit's ears. Could it be? Ren suddenly realized that 16th Knight was playing with Black Rabbit again. However, Jiu Fei Niao and Haruhi Masaaki looked like they had already guessed it. Sure enough, Mr. 16th Knight is the biggest problem child. Black Rabbit was once again driven mad by his antics. Gotcha! At this moment, the sound of the door being pushed open attracted everyone's attention. You're still so energetic, everyone. The voice was heard before the person was seen. Then, a familiar face with black hair and red eyes appeared. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Mr. Villo, long time no see. Ren stood up and politely greeted Wuming. Long time no see, Villo. Jiu Fei now gracefully greeted. Haruhi Masaaki, who was not good with words, only nodded at Wuming, but the smile on his face was particularly conspicuous. Wuming did not reply to them one by one. He just looked at them one by one and spoke to everyone. Everyone, long time no see. Then, Wuming had a smile on his face. Yo, little brother, I missed you so much. 16th Knight, who was standing by the window, walked toward Wuming, flipped over the sofa with one hand, and jumped in front of Wuming. You've been doing well recently, haven't you? Wuming smiled helplessly. First, he participated in all kinds of gift competitions in the Southern District, and then he was attacked by Absolute Evil's clone. 16th Knight must have had a good time punching him. Thanks to you, ha ha ha. At the same time, Wuming and 16th Knight reached out a fist each and gently touched each other. Then, Wuming looked at everyone. Although I know you're probably tired, I've prepared a surprise for you. Do you want to take a look? Surprise. Ren, Black Rabbit, Jiu Fei Niao, and Haruhi Masaaki were stunned. Don't keep us in suspense, hurry up and take it out. 16th Knight put one hand on her waist and waved the other hand in the air. Jiu Fei Niao and Haruhi Masaaki also nodded. Since it was a surprise, he had to take it out directly. That was the understanding of surprise by problem children. However, Wuming began to keep them in suspense again. There's no rush when everyone is here. However, when he said that, everyone was basically here. For example, now. Knock knock. The door that Wuming had not closed was politely knocked twice. Then, Lily's voice came from behind Wuming. Villo, Sama, I've brought Letitia Sama and Miss Pester here. Wuming smiled slightly. Please take a seat, everyone. In the conference room next door, for the first time in 3 years, there were a lot of people gathered. Near the wall, there was a very dignified rectangular table surrounded by the main members of No Name. Actually, this room was the real conference room. The previous room was just a chat room for the members of No Name to rest in. Sometimes, they were too lazy to change places, so it was used as a conference room. At the front was the leader of No Name, Ren Russell. On Ren's left and right sat Wuming and 16th Night. However, this was slightly beyond Ren's tolerance limit. Let's forget about it. Ren's forehead was sweating due to nervousness. You're the leader, Ren. Wuming sighed. It's natural for the leader to sit at the top. 16th Night smiled. Our No Name is going to rise in the future. You have to work hard to master the calmness of a leader. Wuming said while knocking on the table. Besides, we're all on the same side. What's there to be nervous about? Just be normal. However, Ren just smiled awkwardly. It's because we're all on the same side that I'm nervous. Everyone believes in you, little guy. 16th Night held his chin with one hand and pointed at the other No Name members. Ren looked at 16th Night, then looked at the other members who were looking at him with encouraging eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I understand. Sitting at the top, Ren straightened his back and looked serious. I hereby announce that the official No Name meeting begins now. Chapter 838. This meeting was suggested by Mr. Villo, so the first speech will be given to Mr. Villo. Ren reached out his hand and pointed at Wuming. Wuming gave Ren face and nodded. This meeting was suggested by me, mainly because I want to share with everyone the surprise I brought back from the Northern District. Wuming said and looked at everyone. At this time, the seat next to 16 Nights, Hiroi Hiroyuki, who was sitting there, raised his hand and said. It shouldn't be an ordinary surprise, right? If it was an ordinary surprise, there would be no need for this kind of meeting. That's right. Wuming nodded and didn't say much. Because Wuming wanted to use action to prove it. Wuming reached out his hand, and the golden dragoness space ripple appeared on the table. The golden ripple moved horizontally, and a rectangular piece of cloth was spat out from the golden ripple and neatly laid on the table. This is Ren, who was sitting at the head of the table, as well as Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to Wuming, were all shocked and immediately stood up. A flag. Jio Yuko, who was sitting next to Hiroi Hiroyuki, saw the truth of the cloth and was puzzled. It was a red flag with a golden border, and the pattern on the flag was a girl with hills and earth as the background. Miss Hiroyuki, that was our No Name's flag. Lily, who was sitting next to Hiroyuki, said with a trembling voice. At the same time, a few drops of tears fell from Lily's cheeks. The reason why Lily didn't stand up emotionally was because Lily was crying so emotionally that she didn't have the strength to stand up. Our flag. Ren, who stood up, reached out his hand and wanted to touch the flag that belonged to No Name, but because Ren was sitting at the head of the table and the position of the flag wasn't close to Ren couldn't touch it at all. On the contrary, Ryubi and Letitia, who were sitting next to him, easily touched the flag. That's right, it is indeed our flag, Letitia said with absolute certainty. Mr. Villo, how did you find Find our flag. Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming with tears in her eyes. The emotional Black Rabbit also shed tears, and its voice began to tremble slightly. Just like Lily, it was the excitement and joy of the return of the no-name flag. I got it from the Demon King who attacked No Name 3 years ago. Following that, Wu Ming told everyone about what had happened between him and Galji. Wu Ming did not tell the members of No Name everything that had happened in the past. After all, it was too complicated. Therefore, Wu Ming only told them the important things. After he finished speaking, Wu Ming didn't do anything else. He just waiting for the members of No Name to digest the information he had brought. To put it simply, because you captured their important subordinates, you have forced them to complete this trade, right? 16 Knights easily understood the information that Wu Ming had brought. But, Mr. Villo, why didn't you capture all of them? Maybe you could have investigated the Demon King who attacked our community 3 years ago. Black Rabbit asked Wu Ming rather excitedly. Calm down, you perverted rabbit, 16 Knights said rather rudely. Didn't you hear what Villo said? They have some power behind them, and they might even be from the upper echelons of the box court. 16 Knights' eyes were full of ridicule. Of course, 16 Knights was not ridiculing Black Rabbit, but the box court. The upper echelons of the box court created the box court, and then used others to cause trouble in the box court, causing a disaster to the box court. It was as if the partners of justice were actually the villains of the boss. How ironic. Jiao Fei now also opened his mouth to explain to Black Rabbit. If we capture all of them, the people behind them will send new puppets to the lower echelons of the box court. If that was the case, it would be better to let Galji and his people, who he knew pretty well, cast a long line to catch a big fish. Hiroi Hiroyuki also spoke. Also, didn't Villo say that Galji has the tendency to betray the people behind him? Although Hiroi Hiroyuki had no intention of befriending Galji, the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, still made some sense. What Jiao Fei Niao and Hiroi Hiroyuki said was actually the problem that Wu Ming had considered at the time. Therefore, Wu Ming did not choose to cooperate with Galji, nor did he choose to completely fall out with him. In the end, Wu Ming chose to make a trade with Galji. They did not form an alliance, nor did they form an enemy. It was just a simple trade, although Wu Ming was a bit rough. Galji and his people are not a threat. The key is that 4-digit demon king called Maxwell. After Wu Ming said that, the others also had a serious expression. He has an immortal body, so it seems that my fists are useless. 16 Knights shrugged and said in a relaxed tone. I'm afraid my ability won't be of any use either. Jiao Fei now shook her head. Hiroi Hiroyuki looked at his hand, then looked at Wu Ming. Villo, you can't do anything to him either. I can't do anything with normal methods, but I haven't tried any other special methods. Then, Wu Ming looked at his palm and slowly clenched it into a fist. The next time I see him, I'll try to use a sealing technique to deal with him. If you can't beat him to death, then don't beat him to death. It was such a simple principle. But according to what you said, he won't easily appear in front of you, right? Jiao Fei now asked. Maxwell was scared by Wu Ming's blade of salvation, so he abandoned Galji and the others and ran away. Not to mention that it would be difficult to see him again, Maxwell would probably run away immediately after seeing him. I naturally have a way to make that guy walk into a trap. Wu Ming smiled and kept them in suspense. Keeping us in suspense again. Jiao Fei now snorted in disdain at Wu Ming's suspense and turned her head to the side. It's like wine, the more it is brewed, the more fragrant it gets. Wu Ming finished and looked at Ren, who was in deep thought. Ren, do you have anything to say? However, Ren sighed slightly. I'm a bit concerned about Galji. According to what you said, he is about the same age as me, but he was used as a prop less than 3 years old. The point was that Galji and Ren were the leaders of their respective communities. Plus, he was born less than 3 years ago as a prop, so the pain he suffered must not be any less than Ren. You can't sympathize with him, Ren. You know, because of Galji's plan, many people's families were destroyed and they died an unnatural death. Wu Ming's face was serious. If he was not worried about the power behind Galji, even if Wu Ming did not execute Galji and the others on the spot, he would have captured them and handed them over to White Yiksha. After all, a pitiful person must have something to hate. For freedom was not an excuse to hurt others. I'm sorry. Ren lowered his head guiltily. But 16th Knights refuted Ren. This is not something you need to apologize for, leader little thing. Kindness would sometimes bring about mistakes, but the starting point of kindness was never wrong. Also, leader, don't always show such a lack of confidence. You need to be more confident. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. Listening to advice was a good thing, but don't always put your status so low. After all, Ren was the leader of No Name. Yes. I'm very sorry. Ren was at a loss. By the way, Mr. Varen, did you manage to get anything else from No Name from Galji? Black Rabbit quickly tried to smooth things over for Ren. Of course, even if I intend to let them go, I still have to skin them alive. Chapter 839. In the next second, Wu Ming took out a card out of thin air. It was Wu Ming's gift card. When Wu Ming and 16 Knights first arrived at the box court, the four of them went to White Yiksha to appraise the gift according to Black Rabbit's suggestion. At that time, White Yiksha gave each of them a gift card that could be used to store items. However, Wu Ming had the dragon nest space, so he didn't use it often. But, if it's this, I'm afraid my dragon nest space isn't suitable for storing it. As Wu Ming spoke, the gift card in his hand flashed. That was the sign that the item stored in the gift card was taken out. A dragon-like object and a ball of light filled with the aura of the sun appeared in front of everyone. This is a divinity and the sun. Pesht, who had been sitting beside Letitia, was shocked and couldn't help but shout. Pest had been bestowed with the prestige divinity, so she was naturally familiar with it. As the incarnation of the Black Death who was closely related to the sun, Pest was also familiar with the power of the sun. Furthermore, Pest looked at the divine spark and the sun's sovereignty with a thirsty gaze. If she could obtain the rights to these two blessings in this loot-sharing convention, she believed, her strength would definitely undergo a qualitative change. Now, because of Wu Ming, she had reached 4 digits. If she added the divinity and sovereignty of the sun, even if she couldn't reach 3 digits, she would reach the peak of 4 digits. However, Pest could only think about it because the aura of this divinity seems like. 16 Knights couldn't help but look at the silent Letitia. Mr. Villo, could this be? Black Rabbit had more or less guessed it. That's right. This is Letitia's divinity and sovereignty of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation, Wu Ming said with certainty. Pesht, who heard Wu Ming's words, had a look of regret. Since it was a gift from Letitia in the past, then it definitely had nothing to do with her. Letitia's divinity. Jiu Yuan Flying Bird was stunned. Sovereignty of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation? Haruai Hiroyuki stopped stroking his cat. As expected, these are all gifts from Senior Letitia. The Black Rabbit was overjoyed. As if reflecting Black Rabbit's words, the divinity and sun sovereignty slowly floated in front of Letitia. I didn't expect Galji to have Letitia's gift. Ren was quite excited. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Letitia's things could come back. Divinity and sun sovereignty were not small items. One could transform a creature's body into the highest grade of a species, while the other was even rarer. There were only 25 sun sovereignty in total, not to mention that this sun sovereignty in Ophiuchus constellation was created for Letitia. More importantly, if the things that originally belonged to Letitia returned to her, Letitia's strength would definitely improve further. In this way, not only was No Name one step closer to its former peak, but Letitia had also completely recovered. Like a broken jigsaw puzzle, No Name would be pieced back together bit by bit. And Ren believed that with Wu Ming and 16 nights around, this jigsaw puzzle would be even more beautiful than before when the time came. In response to Ren's question, Wu Ming naturally nodded his head. Regarding this question, I will explain it later. Then, Wu Ming looked at Letitia. Okay, Letitia, quickly put away the divinity and sun's sovereignty. But, Letitia hesitated. Master. Letitia looked at Wu Ming with guilt and gratitude. Her face was full of hesitation. Wu Ming, who already had a tacit understanding with Letitia, understood Letitia's eyes. Letitia was not willing to accept the gift that originally belonged to her. As for the reason, perhaps it was guilt and self-blame for giving up her own power, or perhaps it was because she wanted to let others use it, or perhaps it was because she was satisfied with the power that Wu Ming gave her. All of these could be the reason why Letitia was not willing to accept it. But, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. Even if Letitia was Wu Ming's, even if Letitia took the initiative to give up these gifts, even if these gifts were separated from Letitia for a long time, no matter what, these were Letitia's things. This divinity was originally yours, it's just returning it to its original owner. As for the sun's sovereignty, among all of us here, Ophiuchus constellation is the most compatible with you. If you don't want it, then this sun's sovereignty is useless. After all, the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation was originally an additional sun's sovereignty that the box court system created for Letitia. Don't be blinded by power, but don't take the initiative to give up the power that you deserve. Only with power can you protect the people you want to protect. The others didn't say anything, they just quietly watched this scene. If you still feel guilty, then take this power and protect, No Name, well, protect the box court well. This is the atonement for your previous incarnation of the Demon King to wreak havoc on the box court. It's also the mission that I, as your master, have given you, Letitia. At that moment, without waiting for Letitia's reaction, Wu Ming forcefully stuffed Letitia's divinity and the sun's sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation into Letitia's body. Letitia sighed and smiled helplessly. Master, I understand. I promise you, this body will always be loyal to you, I will definitely carry out your will to the end. At that moment, Letitia's aura also suddenly changed. An invisible pressure spread out in all directions, everyone present noticed Letitia's change, even Lily was no exception. Now, with all of her previous power restored, plus the power that Wu Ming gave before, it could be said that Letitia was now at the top of the 4 digits. Now, even White Yiksha who didn't return the divinity and spirit core couldn't do anything to Letitia. Whoa whoa. Pest let out a few unwilling whimpers. Damn it, I'm so envious. That's great, Senior Letitia. Lily's little tail wagged. If there was anyone who was the happiest, it would definitely be Lily. As someone who didn't have much battle power and wasn't part of the main force, but was able to sit together and discuss with everyone, Lily was naturally very happy to see her comrade's power rise to another level. If she didn't have any power, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger. If she couldn't protect her comrade, she would pray for her comrade to become stronger to protect the other comrade. As for herself, who didn't have much battle power, she just had to do what she was supposed to do, for example, do the logistics work that her comrade gave her. Thank you, Lily. Letitia returned Lily's bright smile. The surprise that Mr. Villo brought really scared me. We have to hang up our flag, this way. Our No Name will once again have a community with a flag. Black Rabbit excitedly held up the flag, ready to do as he said. Then, Wu Ming raised his hand to signal Black Rabbit to not be anxious. Don't be anxious, Black Rabbit, I also got something from Galji. However, this frightened everyone. Hey you, did you really skin the other party? Chapter 840. 16th Knights ridiculed in an exaggerated tone. In fact, whether it was 16th Knights or the others, they were already surprised that Wu Ming was able to find the no-name flag. And Wu Ming finding Letitia's divine spark and sun sovereignty was also out of everyone's expectations. Not to mention the divine spark, there were only 25 sun sovereignty. Not to mention the number of people in Box Court, just the number of communities in Box Court was as many as the stars in the sky and the gravel on the ground. It was reasonable to say that Wu Ming was able to obtain the no-name flag, Letitia's divine spark and Ophiuchus' sun sovereignty from Galji, but they didn't expect that Wu Ming would actually ask Galji to hand over other things. To be honest, everyone began to guess who was the person that Wu Ming had captured to be able to make Galji suffer such a big loss. Seeing everyone's doubts, Wu Ming began to explain. My original request was to return the no-name item, but Galji wasn't the mastermind behind the scenes, he was just a puppet, so I didn't expect to exchange it for many things. Wu Ming was hoping to get some other good things from Galji, but he didn't expect Galji and the others to carry so many gifts that belonged to no-name. The no-name flag was taken out from her gift card when Wu Ming woke Ling up, and Letitia's divine spark and Ophiuchus' sun sovereignty were taken out by Galji. By the way, the gifts of Box Court could only be obtained through transactions, transfers, or gift competitions. They couldn't be stolen. The community flag was this type of gift. The Demon King used his authority to attack the no-name 3 years ago. The Demon King won, and the flag became the Demon King's possession. After that, the flag was transferred to Galji, and Galji transferred it to Wu Ming through a transaction witnessed by Box Court. If Wu Ming tried to steal it, the no-name flag might be invalidated by Box Court system. However, Box Ting's system dispelled Wu Ming's thoughts of taking advantage of others. It was rather regretful. Asterisk cough asterisk cough asterisk, asterisk in short, thanks to the Box Court system, Galji was able to hand over everything that belonged to no-name. The flag of no-name, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the sun of the Ophiuchus constellation, and the last one, the sovereignty of the Leo sun. After Wu Ming finished speaking, the gift card that he had yet to put away suddenly burst out with a ray of light, and the aura of the sun that was no weaker than that of Ophiuchus constellation rushed over. This is another sun sovereign. Pester was shocked once again. There were only 25 sun sovereigns, and Wu Ming had taken out 2 of them in just a short while. In the lower level of the courtyard, there were actually 2 sun sovereigns in the 7-digit outer sect. What kind of explosive news was this? Speaking of which, other than Letitia, is there anyone else in no-name who has a sun sovereign? It wasn't that Wu Ming was curious, but it was mainly because there were too few sun sovereigns. White Yiksha and her old enemy together held 20 sun sovereigns. Excluding the additional Ophiuchus constellation, there were only 4 sun sovereigns that were wandering outside. Even if no-name was once the largest community in the East District, with only 4 people, it was still extremely difficult to collect sun sovereigns. Therefore, when Wu Ming knew that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation was once bestowed by no-name, he was indeed shocked. This once again proved that no-name was indeed the largest community in the East District. That was the sun sovereign that the Sun Lion once held. Black Rabbit began to explain. Because it was a divine beast that pulled the chariot of the sun god, it coincidentally obtained the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation. However, 3 years ago, it and its other companions were captured by the Demon King that attacked no-name. Black Rabbit's expression was a little sad, as if it was recalling what happened 3 years ago. However, Galji holding the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation proved that Galji and the others had an undeniable relationship with the Demon King that attacked no-name. Even the sun sovereign has returned to our hands. No-name's former companions will be found in the future. Seeing the depressed Black Rabbit, Wu Ming opened his mouth to comfort him. Yes, I understand, Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit shook his head and once again revealed a smile. He couldn't always be depressed, he had to be motivated. Speaking of which, who should I give the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation to? Wu Ming was distressed. At this time, Pest was eager to give it a try. However, Pest didn't even have time to speak. Since Master brought it back, then it's appropriate to give it to Master to use. Letitia suggested. Anyway, I don't need it. 16th Knights shrugged his shoulders. He, 16th Knights, wasn't going to take advantage of it. I don't need it either. I have Dean. Miss Jiu Fei Niao was the same. She didn't want the favor of charity. If there was a need, she would fight for it herself, just like when she obtained Dean. Haruai Biao also shook his head. I just want to make friends. As for me, Mr. Villo already lent me Arjol. Ren was slightly embarrassed when he said this. When Ren first heard that Wu Ming wanted to give him Arjol, he was scared silly. That was a star spirit, wouldn't it be making a mountain out of a molehill if he gave it to him? However, in the end, under Wu Ming's tough attitude, Ren had no choice but to borrow it from Wu Ming. Wu Ming wasn't going to take it back anyway. Naturally, I don't need it either. Letitia also shook her head. Not to mention that she already had the sun sovereign of the Ophiuchus constellation, she had already gained enough from this loot-sharing conference. Naturally, she didn't need it. Black Rabbit doesn't need it either. Black Rabbit shook his head and his rabbit ears swayed along with it. Black Rabbit was mainly the judge of the gift competition. Even in terms of combat power, Black Rabbit wasn't to be underestimated. He was given 4 godhood equipment by Sakura when he was young and was worshipped by the rabbits as the son of God. Black Rabbit was actually very strong. Lily doesn't need it either. After all, Lily is a support staff. Lily laughed mischievously. I don't need it either. Wu Ming shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He had the sun incarnation and didn't need the power of the sun. As for the sun sovereign's ability to summon star beasts, it was just a summon. With the dependent incarnation, it was equivalent to a summon. Therefore, Wu Ming didn't need the sun sovereign. However, Pest was roaring in his heart. If you don't need it, you can give it to me. Finally, Mr. Pest made a rare speech. Cough cough. According to the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation's ability, as well as everyone's ability, we can just make a reasonable plan. No matter what, he had to fight for it. Wu Ming looked at Pest meaningfully. Pest was almost scared to death. In the end, Wu Ming nodded. What Pest said makes sense. Immediately after, Wu Ming looked at Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, does the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation have any other abilities? If the sun sovereign was only able to summon star beasts, it would be too cheap. The Black Rabbit stretched out a finger and gently tapped its chin. I remember that the sun sovereign of the Leo constellation can give the wielder the ability to reflect all weapons. It's a pretty good ability. I see. Wu Ming nodded. Then, give this to 16th Knight. Chapter 841. Wait. Why are you giving it to me? 16th Knights frowned. Was he looking down on him? 16th Knights, you're the only one who fights with your bare hands. You're the most suitable person to receive the gift of reflecting weapons. Wu Ming explained. Among the people present, if they didn't have long-range attacks, they had weapons and items. Only 16 Knights relied on his code unknown blessing to fight with his fists. Then I don't want it. 16th Knights put his hands behind his head and looked like he was saying, what can you do if I don't want it? Everyone smiled helplessly. He was indeed a problematic child. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. Then, I'll have the sovereignty of the sun for now. Does anyone have any objections? 16th Knights immediately waved his hand. No objections, no objections. Everyone else nodded. Only Pest, who was angry but didn't dare to say anything, was looking forward to it. But when he saw Wu Ming's face, Pest was afraid and didn't dare to say anything. Then, this meeting is over. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Ren nodded. We also have to do some work for the return of the no-name flag. After all, the return of the no-name flag was a huge change for the no-name and the outside world. And the one who prepared for this change was naturally the leader of the community, Ren. Young Master Ren, I'll help later. Black Rabbit volunteered. She basically had nothing to do anyway. I'll help too. Lily also raised her little hand. Thank you for your hard work. Do your best. Jiu Fei now smiled. Do your best. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded expressionlessly. If you're free, why don't you come and help everyone? You two problematic children. Black Rabbit showed an angry and helpless expression. But the two pretended not to hear. Black Rabbit was used to it and didn't bother with the two anymore. Then, Black Rabbit turned her gaze to the more reliable Wu Ming. But, I said, let's duel, 16th Knights. Wu Ming suddenly looked at 16th Knights. Oh. 16th Knight's eyes suddenly lit up. Hey. Everyone was shocked. Wait a minute. Why do you want to duel all of a sudden? Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming at a loss. This didn't happen all of a sudden, Black Rabbit. 16th Knights raised her head and closed her eyes. Then, 16th Knights looked at Wu Ming. This is a continuation of the unfinished fight between men. Wu Ming shrugged and admitted this point. Although that's part of the reason, the main reason is that 16th Knight rejected my proposal, which made me very unhappy. Then, Wu Ming stretched out 2 fingers and pointed at 16 Knights. The winner will be able to command the winner to do anything, and the loser will have to give the winner a gift as a reward for winning. What do you think? It was different from the simple, if you lose, you have to be obedient. There was also an additional reward. What an interesting condition. I like it. 16 Knights placed her palms on the table, her eyes burning with the flames of war. But then, 16th Knights showed a distressed expression. However, I don't have any extra rewards. How about this? Black Rabbit and I had a gift competition before the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. I received the command to command Black Rabbit to do anything except perverted things. How about this as a reward? 16th Knights emphasized on the word perverted. The falling clock tower that Wu Ming caught with psychokinesis was the masterpiece of the gift competition between 16th Knights and Black Rabbit. Don't emphasize it on purpose. Black Rabbit was on the verge of breaking down. She felt that she had embarrassed herself. No problem. Wu Ming agreed without hesitation. Don't agree so quickly. Black Rabbit wanted to cry but had no tears. Then, how about we use a countdown to see who can cause more damage to the other in the given time? Wu Ming suggested. After all, they were partners. They couldn't really kill each other. But if they didn't kill each other, they wouldn't be able to finish the competition in a short time. Therefore, a countdown was the best solution. A countdown. It doesn't matter. As long as we can fight each other. 16th Knight smiled as she rubbed her palms. As she finished speaking, 2 pieces of parchment appeared in front of Wu Ming and 16th Knights. It was the contract for the competition. Gift game name, duel between the two. Use any method to cause damage to the other party in the given time. Contestants, Villoth Saransword, 16th Knight's reverse winning condition. After the given time, the damage will be less. Winning reward, command the loser to do anything, 1 time, failure penalty, provide any gift to the winner. Oath, respect the above content. Based on the judgment of the court system, the gift game will be held. Because there was no organizer, the community at the end was blank. After checking that there were no mistakes, the parchment in front of the two burned instantly. That meant that the contract was in effect. All right. Without further ado, let's start. 16th Knight said and walked towards the door. They couldn't fight in the house, right? Wait. Wait a minute. Mr. 16th Knights, can't we not fight? Black Rabbit asked anxiously. Even though it was a sparring session, Black Rabbit still didn't want to see her companions hurt each other. But Wu Ming shook his head. Black Rabbit, you have to know that 16th Knights is a problematic child. He won't listen to you. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Black Rabbit turned to look at Wu Ming. Mr. Villo, you just came back from the North District not long ago. Isn't it good for everyone to rest for a while? But this time it was 16th Knight's turn to speak. Black Rabbit, Villo is the most problematic child. You have to know that he was the one who started this fight. I just agreed to it. With a presumptuous smile, 16th Knight pushed open the door and walked out without saying anything. Black Rabbit still wanted to say something to 16th Knights, but 16th Knights left the room and closed the door. Wait. Black Rabbit helplessly reached out a hand to the empty door. Sighing, Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming again. Really, Mr. Villo, you also said. But Black Rabbit's voice stopped abruptly. Because Black Rabbit realized that Wu Ming also disappeared. Master just left using the portal, Black Rabbit, Letitia kindly explained to Black Rabbit. Wu Ming left using the portal when Black Rabbit turned to look at 16th Knights. I'll go check on the two of them. Haruai Toshi said and left with San Mao in his arms. I'm interested in a fight between two freaks. Jiu Yuanfei nodded elegantly at the crowd and left with Haruai Toshi. Then, excuse me. After saying that, Letitia stood up and left. It seemed that she was also going to watch. Only Pesht, who didn't have much presence, and Ren and Lily who had some conscience were still there. Black Rabbit who was exhausted completely gave up. Black Rabbit sat in her seat, leaned on the table, and yelled as if she had given up. Ah! Really, Black Rabbit doesn't want to care about these problematic adults anymore. Ren and Lily could only smile helplessly. Only Pester remained sulking in his place, jabbing his finger. Sun sovereignty. I need it too. Chapter 842. 16th Knights and Wu Ming walked side by side in the no-name corridor. Although the two were about to duel, Wu Ming and 16th Knights were companions after all. Naturally, they would not destroy their friendship because of a mere duel. Speaking of which, have you figured out the other party's goal? 16th Knights asked as he walked with his hands in his pockets. 16th Knights was not talking about Galji's own goal, but the goal of the person behind Galji. It seems like they want Galji and the others to unlock the seal of the final trial. However, the key items are our flag and the sun's sovereignty. Their plot has basically been destroyed. After all, the key items had been traded by Wu Ming. Because the other party's plan had been destroyed, Wu Ming did not go into detail in the meeting just now. Putting aside the sovereignty of the sun, the flag of No Name was unique. After the flag returned to No Name, stealing the flag would no longer work. The only way to obtain it again was through transfer, trade, or a gift competition. However, the first two were impossible. If it was a gift competition, only the Demon King would force others to participate in the gift competition with the flag. And with Wu Ming and the other main forces, there was no need to be afraid. Or rather, if a Demon King were to attack now, it would be exactly what No Name wanted. After all, the slogan of defeating the Demon King had already been spread. They had to defeat more Demon Kings. However, it was not that easy to encounter a Demon King. If a Demon King came knocking on their door, they would be very grateful. Did you not get any information about the person behind Galji from him? 16th Knights continued to ask. It was normal for 16th Knights to pay attention to information. After all, 16th Knights was a smart person. If 16th Knights was still a no-name during this time, Wuming would not have looked for White Yiksha first, but 16th Knights. If there is, I already said it. Let's not talk about the other party being very careful and not leaving any clues. Wuming denied 16th Knights. After all, most of the information came from Wuming and the others after a series of verifications. Galji and the others did not tell Wuming any information. Also, Galji refused to reveal any information. Wuming felt that Galji just didn't know. After all, he was just a prop that had been monitored for less than 3 years. Although Wuming had thought of trading for some other information, such as Maxwell's, before Wuming could ask, Galji directly refused to provide any information to Wuming. According to Galji, the two parties were only doing a simple barter transaction. Actually, it could also be considered as Wuming's bargaining chip not being heavy enough. Ling and Aurora exchanged for the no-name flag, Letitia's divinity, the sovereignty of the Ophiuchus constellation, and the sovereignty of the Leo constellation's sun. Regardless of the quantity, just based on the value, Wuming had already gained a huge advantage. Galji, on the other hand, probably wanted to regain some face and indirectly refused to provide Wuming with the information. Don't you just want a simple transaction? Then let's just make a simple deal. One hand for the money, and the other for the goods. No money. Then I don't have any goods here either. Thank you for your patronage. Wuming was quite dissatisfied with this, but thinking that he could get the no-name flag back this time, Galji's little tricks were nothing. What Wuming didn't know was that every gift that Galji gave Wuming was something that he had previously planned or had practical abilities. But just because he saw Wuming, he was forced to give all these gifts to Wuming. It could be said that Wuming had skinned a layer of his skin. If Wuming knew the bitterness in Galji's heart, he would only think that Galji reaped what he sowed. After all, a layer of skin could be considered Wuming giving Galji a small punishment for attacking the box and attacking no name. In short, it's all over. 16 Knights took the opportunity to take it. What we need to pay attention to now is fighting. Fighting. Seems like you've been waiting for this for a long time. Wuming couldn't help but smile. This time, 16th Knights was probably going to vent all the dissatisfaction that he had been holding in since the last fight. Then, Wuming suggested. Let's fight in my fixed barrier. You can do whatever you want there. The Colosseum from last time. 16 Knights was naturally talking about the 6th floor of Nazalic where the two-headed dragon army was trapped at the fire dragon birth ceremony. Let's not go there this time. Let's go somewhere else. Wuming said. Golden ripples appeared around him, and the twisted golden staff with the 7-headed dragon coiled around it automatically floated out. Grabbing it, Wuming tapped the ground with the tip of the staff. Wave-like ripples spread out and surrounded Wuming and 16 Knights. The next second, the two disappeared. Just as they turned the corner, Komodo Asuka and Hiroi Biao looked at each other in confusion. I clearly saw the two of them walk over. Could it be that they discovered us? Master and 16 Knights went into Master's fixed barrier, Letitia explained as she walked out from behind them. As Wuming's dependent, Letitia could sense Wuming's location. That Colosseum. Komodo Asuka naturally remembered how Wuming brought them to another space during the fire dragon birth ceremony. Letitia, can't you bring us in? Hiroi Biao asked as if he was asking for help. However, Letitia shook her head. Unfortunately, that's an ability brought by Master's grace. I can't interfere. So, we can only wait until the two of them finish fighting. Komodo Asuka sighed helplessly. Staff of Ain's Wuming, the 8th floor of the fixed barrier. In the endless wilderness, Wuming and 16 Knights faced each other with a distance of more than 10 meters. This place is quite spacious. 16 Knights was quite satisfied. There were no plants, animals, and even the ground was dead. They could do whatever they wanted. This is the fixed barrier of the staff of Ain's Wuming. Some are suitable for fighting, while some are suitable for resting. Wuming said as he put the staff of Ain's Wuming into the golden ripple that opened up again. Then, Wuming snapped his fingers and activated the advanced tool creation ability. A huge hourglass suddenly appeared in the sky. Use this as a timer. Wuming looked at 16 knights. However, 16 knights didn't care. It doesn't matter. Let's start. 16 knights showed a very happy smile to Wuming. Then, with one hand raised, Wuming and 16 knights looked at each other. Neither of them spoke nor did they move. Let's start. As soon as he said that, Wuming snapped his fingers and the hourglass began to operate. Bang! The sound of the ground being crushed was heard. 16 knights' speed was comparable to the speed of Universe 3 as she instantly burst toward Wuming's position. The battle was about to start. Chapter 843. Boom! 16 knights rushed to Wuming's side with the speed of the third universe and smashed his fist down. The place where Wuming was standing instantly exploded, and smoke and dust filled the air. As the smoke and dust slowly dispersed, 16 knights' fist was pressed on the broken ground, and Wuming was nowhere to be seen. Still so impatient, 16 knights. Wuming's figure floated in the sky as he teleported away. It's a countdown match after all. I have to seize the time and enjoy the fun of fighting. 16 knights shook his arm. Because he was a bit agitated, he used a bit more strength to smash the ground. Wuming, who was floating in the sky with psychokinesis, released his power of the will completely and spread it to the ground that 16 knights had punched. Although the ground didn't seem to be broken that badly, and only the surface cracked, Wuming could see through his power of the will that a crack went deep into the ground. Wuming began to wonder if 16 knights would break through this place. The staff of Anziergen's enchantment was connected to the 10 underground floors of Nazalik. It didn't mean that Wuming could only use it on the 8th floor and not the other floors. With 16 knights' fist, if he really wanted to break through this place, Wuming wouldn't have any doubts. Of course, if Wuming kept supplying mana to maintain the enchantment could still be repaired if it wasn't broken through in one go. Just like now. The ground under 16 knights' feet seemed to have gone back in time as it slowly returned to its original state. Can this place repair itself? That's not fun. 16 knights was a bit dissatisfied. Why? Things that are broken automatically repair themselves. That's not fun at all. It turned out that 16 knights was a problematic child, and he was the violent type. Then I won't let it repair itself. It'll save my mana. That's what you wanted. Wuming smiled helplessly. Wuming immediately stopped supplying mana to the enchantment to repair itself. That's more like it. 16th Knights laughed wantonly as he bent his knees and jumped. A large scale of cracks appeared on the ground as 16th Knights rushed into the sky. Unable to fly, he could only rely on this method to attack Wuming. Without any fancy moves, 16 Knights' weapon was just his fists. Facing 16 Knights, Wuming responded with the same method of attack, punching. The two unadorned fists collided with each other, causing the entire atmosphere to tremble. Visible shockwaves spread out in all directions with their fists as the dividing line. Boom! After a short stalemate, the two separated. Because 16th Knights was a human, just a slightly special human, he naturally couldn't overcome the gravity of the ground. Thus, 16th Knight's body began to automatically descend to the ground. Wuming, on the other hand, couldn't help but go a little higher due to the inertia from the exchange of blows with 16 Knights. Being able to fly is indeed a good thing, 16th Knights, who was kneeling on one knee, teased Wuming. I didn't think of using this to take advantage of you. Because 16th Knights was so aggressive, Wuming subconsciously used the teleportation door to go to the sky. Wuming finished speaking and landed on the ground. Both of them suffered some damage from the exchange of blows, but Wuming's injury was more serious. Shaking his numb right hand, Wuming smiled helplessly. Sure enough, in terms of explosive power, you have the upper hand. If Wuming didn't have the advantage of being in the air, Wuming would be the first to retreat. However, compared to Wuming, who came to the ground to fight with 16th Knights didn't have the idea of being waterproof. I won't go easy on you. 16th Knights pretended to rush over again. I don't need you to go easy on me either. Wuming swung his fist and met 16th Knight's second punch. Boom, just like before, the ground was split by the shockwave. At the same time, the ground couldn't withstand the impact of the two and shattered, sending rocks flying everywhere. However, this time, the ground didn't recover. On the contrary, a large number of rocks that flew into the sky fell and buried the two of them. Crash! Wuming released his magic and bounced the rocks away. He wasn't hurt at all. What a convenient ability. 16th Knights, who crawled out of the rocks, said enviously. Although he wasn't hurt, 16th Knights, who didn't have the ability to release energy, was in a sorry state. I have many abilities. Moreover, this is just a simple way to release energy. Wuming smiled and didn't mind. Is that so? Speaking of which, is the glowing rune on your body one of your abilities? 16th Knights pointed at Wuming's arm. Wuming raised his hands. Sure enough, there were some runes on Wuming's hands. It's just a lune rune for strengthening. It only increases strength. I used it when I fought with you before. With the strengthening of the lune rune, Wuming wouldn't be at a disadvantage when fighting with 16th Knights. I didn't pay attention at the time. Forget it, it doesn't matter. It's just a strengthening rune. Watch me break it. 16th Knight said and rushed over again. Come and try. Wuming responded with his fist. The battle was still ongoing. Just as Wuming said before that he wouldn't take advantage of 16th Knights, Wuming didn't use any fancy abilities. He just fought with 16th Knights using his fists. Although their attacks were blocked by each other's fists, it was still a response to 16th Knight's request. 16th Knights also used his fists to fight with Wuming. Or rather, he simply didn't have any other abilities. However, 16th Knights didn't need any other abilities. His body was the best weapon. Reality proved that it was just as 16 Knights had said. He would break these runes for Wuming. Breaking the lune rune wasn't a joke. However, every time Wuming's lune rune was broken, Wuming would immediately use telekinesis to inscribe a new lune rune on his body. Gradually, the entire 8th layer of the wilderness was affected by the battle between the two. Basically, there wasn't a single place that was intact. There were craters left behind by fists and legs everywhere. The better places were full of spiderweb-like cracks, and the worst places were completely shattered into pieces. As for the deeper underground, there was no need to guess. It was probably also fragmented. Because Wuming cut off the supply of mana to repair the enchantment, the shattered ground of the 8th layer didn't automatically repair itself. Gradually, the 8th layer couldn't hold on any longer. Caw, caw, caw. The sound of something heavy breaking entered their ears. 16th Knights, who was temporarily separated from Wuming, panted heavily with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Is this place going to collapse? You guessed right. Wuming, who was also panting heavily, responded with a smile. After Wuming said that, the entire 8th layer collapsed. Chapter 844. Generally speaking, if it was a multi-story building, once a floor collapsed, the people on that floor would automatically fall to the next floor due to gravity. However, Nazalik's underground tomb was a magical underground building transformed from the game into reality. Therefore, it couldn't be defined by common sense. As mentioned before, it wasn't just the 8th floor that didn't mean the other floors of Nazalik didn't exist anymore. It must be known that once the staff of Anziergen's inherent enchantment was activated, it would directly open the 10 underground floors of Nazalik. If only one floor was used, the other floors would be idle and wouldn't disappear or exist. When one floor was destroyed, there were two possibilities for the people in the inherent enchantment. One was to be transferred out of the inherent enchantment, and the other was to be transferred to the other floors. By the way, Wuming could control which floor they were transferred to. After the 8th floor collapsed, it completely turned into magic and dissipated. The 8th floor was equivalent to being empty. After all, the 8th floor needed time to repair itself after being destroyed. Of course, if Wuming transferred a large amount of magic, the self-repair time would be greatly reduced. Of course, the easiest way was to reactivate Nazalik's inherent enchantment after it was closed. After leaving the 8th floor, Wuming and 16 knights didn't return to No Name. Instead, they went to the other floors of Nazalik. 9th floor, a lounge in the royal suite. Wuming and 16 knights' figures automatically appeared. The two sat face to face on a sofa with a coffee table. Great! Great! Ha ha ha! I haven't been this happy in a long time. 16 knights sat on the sofa and shouted happily. 16 knights had been bored in her original world for 16 years. Moreover, the bet between 16 knights and Wuming had been delayed for a long time. With the two added together, 16 knights' mood was very good at the moment. I'm finally done with you. You don't use your brain at all when you fight. As the person involved in the fight with 16 knights, Wuming felt it deeply. Aren't you the same? 16th Knights laughed happily as she looked at Wuming. Indeed, Wuming had almost released the bestial nature engraved deep within him. After all, Wuming wasn't human. It couldn't be helped that he didn't dare. Fighting each other with fists without weapons was the best way to arouse blood. Fortunately, Wuming managed to control himself. Otherwise, the match would have been over. Oh. I didn't expect you to have such a good place. 16 knights, who was done laughing, began to pay attention to her surroundings. Although Wuming didn't know why 16th Knights had such knowledge, Wuming could tell that 16th Knights was shocked by the excellence of the VIP suites on the 9th floor. After all, this was a place for players to escape from reality. Naturally, they would make it more comfortable. I kind of inherited it. This is all designed by the predecessors. Leaning on the sofa, Wuming snapped his fingers. 2 glasses of wine appeared in front of Wuming and 16th Knights. This is a place to rest. Water and wine are provided for free. Wuming explained. Of course, there was only water and wine. After all, this was a game. There was no such thing as eating, so they could only drink some water and wine. If there's such a good place, you should have brought me here earlier, 16th Knight said as she unceremoniously raised her wine glass. Then you and the 2 of them would have caused a ruckus here. Wuming also responded without holding back. The 2 of them naturally referred to Jyo Asuka and Kasuga Hibiya, the 2 problem children. Ha ha ha, how could that be? You have to believe me. We are companions. 16th Knights waved her hand jokingly. Speaking of which, I was tricked by you in the end. The last thing 16th Knights was referring to was the fight just now. When the fight between the 2 broke on the 8th floor, there was only a bit of sand left in the hourglass. Then, 16th Knights discovered that she was healed by something. What 16th Knights didn't know was that Nazalik's teleportation never had any light. It was just a sudden disappearance. Therefore, the light that appeared when the 8th floor broke wasn't a sign of teleportation. It was the activation of the healing rune that Wuming designed in advance. That was the Lune rune that Wuming buried in the ground while fighting with 16th Knights. Wuming intentionally lured 16th Knights to not stay in the same place to fight. Moreover, 16th Knights, who was lured by Wuming, wouldn't go to the same place to fight. Only then would the healing runes in every inch of the 8th floor not be destroyed by 16th Knights. It was precisely because Wu Ming and 16th Knights didn't continue fighting in the same place that their fight affected the entire 8th floor. In the end, the healing rune was activated. The hourglass in the sky also ran out of sand, and the time was up. Then, if I didn't guess wrong, the result should be a draw. 16th Knight said as a contract appeared in front of 16th Knights. Sure enough, there were 2 victors on the contract. Victors, Villot Silenceward, 16 Knights in reverse. However, there was no such thing as a draw in the gift competition, so the 2 of them were also losers. Losers, Villot Silenceward, 16 Knights in reverse. In this way, both sides could order the other side once. What a pity. I originally wanted to heal myself in the end. I didn't expect to include you in the healing range. Wu Ming drank a mouthful of wine without blushing. I almost believed you. 16th Knight smiled casually and drank the wine in one gulp. The victory condition on the contract was like this. Victory condition: after the time is up, the damage taken will be less. Wu Ming had implanted healing runes in the shattered ground of the 8th floor. When these healing runes were activated, the effect was to completely heal the 2 of them. In this way, after the time was up, the 2 of them would be the ones who didn't receive any damage. Hey, this is completely the same as when I competed with Black Rabbit. 16th Knights was quite depressed. A competition was to determine the winner and loser. Why would it be a draw every day? But this time, 16th Knights was quite happy, so 16th Knights didn't want to pursue Wu Ming. Here, this is Black Rabbit's command authority. 16th Knights took out a piece of parchment from the gift card and threw it to Wu Ming. Alright, give me the sovereignty of Leo's Sunday, 16th Knight said bluntly as he extended his hand towards Wu Ming. You guessed it. Wu Ming took out a ball of light and threw it to 16th Knights. Even an idiot can see that you want to give me the sovereignty of the Leo constellation Sunday. That's why you want to compete with me. I'm just curious as to how you lost the sovereignty of the sun to me. Chapter 845. Just like how Wu Ming sent Ophiuchus constellation Sun Sovereign into Letitia's body, 16 Knights merged the Sun Sovereign into his own body. Indeed, Wu Ming never thought of using the Sun Sovereign from the start. After knowing that Leo constellation Sun Sovereign could deflect weapons, Wu Ming's first thought was to reverse 16 Knights. Firstly, 16 Knights was the most suitable for Leo constellation Sun Sovereign, but there was another more important reason. After all, Wu Ming couldn't stay in the box world forever, but the rest of No Name could. After he left, No Name would have to rely on his companions. Thus, Wu Ming would leave whatever he could for them. Of course, Wu Ming also didn't need the Sun Sovereign. You can't be too obsessed with power, but you can't run away from your own power. Wu Ming's advice to Letitia had the same effect on Wu Ming. Since the Sun Sovereign couldn't give Wu Ming more power, it was like a chicken rib, so it was better to give it to the rest of No Name. Thus, Wu Ming was glad that he didn't fight with 16 Knights. If he did, there would have been a winner. In that case, he wouldn't have been able to give 16 Knights the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. After all, normal methods couldn't make 16 Knights accept the Sun Sovereign of Leo constellation. Wu Ming had no choice but to use this method to understand the agreement between him and 16 Knights. Now you know what method I used. After replying to 16 Knights, Wu Ming drank all the wine in his cup. Although I know, it's a fact that I was tricked by you. It's really annoying. 16 Knights smiled proudly. Look, even if he was tricked, 16 Knights would still continue to smile. As for the reason, let's make it clear in advance. Next time, you have to fight with me properly. No one is going easy. Use your full strength. 16 Knights' tone was serious. His eyes were burning with fighting spirit. It seemed like he was going to fight for real. After all, they had already experienced fighting each other. Next, they would have to fight with real swords and spears. 16 Knights didn't only use his fists to fight, he still had trump cards he hadn't used yet. Forget it. If we really fought like that, Black Rabbit would cry herself dry. Wu Ming shook his head. One had to know that a real fight was no joke. Wu Ming and 16 Knights were both strong in the box. If they fought, they would be injured would be light, but they would definitely be heavily injured. Their lives might even be in danger. Although 16 Knights was indeed looking for excitement, the two of them were not mortal enemies. There was no need to fight to the death, right? Previously in the conference room, Black Rabbit was about to cry when he found out that Wu Ming and 16 Knights were going to fight. If it really came to a real fight like 16 Knights said, Black Rabbit might really cry. Forget it then. We'll talk about it later. 16th Knights, who seemed to have thought of something, also chose to give up. It's about time. We should go out. Wu Ming realized that the two had been away from No Name for a long time. It was time to go back. Hey. You should have other spaces. Why don't you take me for a walk? 16 Knights said as her eyes lit up. Wu Ming showed a helpless expression. Because Wu Ming knew that this was the light of a problem child. No Name's headquarters. Wu Ming and 16 Knights left the corridor. The two of them seemed to have removed their invisibility and appeared out of thin air. In the end, Wu Ming didn't take 16 Knights for a walk. After all, if the other two problem children found out about this, they would either have a falling out or pester Wu Ming all the time. It's really unfair. Since 16 Knights also visited your private space, we have to do the same. At that time, the two of them would probably say something like that. If that's the case, why not refuse from the beginning? That's what Wu Ming thought. However, 16 Knights began to fuss over this. You're really boring. You were so bold when you were fighting. 16 Knights' expression was as if she encountered something boring. To put it simply, she was quite bored. Didn't I say that Nazalik's enchantment is just a big tomb? There's really nothing to see. Wu Ming sighed helplessly and tried to persuade her again. As if there was no other way, Wu Ming used his trump card. If you're really not happy, I can find White Yiksha to fight with you. I don't want to fight White Yiksha now. I still have self-awareness. Although 16 Knights said so, the smile on her face told Wu Ming that 16 Knights was not afraid of fighting White Yiksha. Wu Ming didn't care much about it. After thinking for a while, he said to 16 Knights. Our flag has returned anyway. Presumably, there will be a lot of gift competitions that you need to participate in. As an organization, the most important thing for a community was its name and flag. The community's name and flag could be used for publicity to make the community more famous and drive the development of the community. In the past, because the flag and name of No Name had been taken away, they could only use the slogan, "Down with the Demon King," to promote themselves. Now that the flag had been recovered, they had to vigorously promote themselves. And the best way to advertise was to win a large number of gift contests. After all, the gift contest was the main theme of the Suitland world. Only by winning the gift contest and showing their strength would the people of the Suitland remember them and be valued by other communities. Only then could they develop themselves. Even if No Name still didn't have a name, as long as the logo on the No Name flag was shown. Of course, it didn't mean that the slogan "Down with the Demon King" that No Name previously advertised was invalid. It was just a two-pronged approach. That's true. We have to get busy. When it came to the gift competition, 16 Knights would become excited. But then, 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming again. You just said you, right? Then what are you going to do? Don't tell me you're going to leave again. 16 Knights had a smile on his face, but his eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. As a smart person, when 16 Nights first saw Wu Ming leave, he deduced that Wu Ming had something he couldn't let go of in the outside world. Wu Ming wasn't like the three of them. When he was first invited to the boxings, he was already prepared to give up everything in the outside world. Although Wu Ming said that he came to the boxings because of a letter, after Wu Ming left the boxings, 16 Nights asked Black Rabbit how many letters were sent. The result was naturally 3 letters. In other words, if Wu Ming didn't lie, the one who used the letter to invite him definitely wasn't Black Rabbit. Of course, it couldn't be said that Wu Ming was lying to them. After all, Wu Ming said from the beginning that he came to the boxings to find his body. But this also meant that after finding his body, even if he didn't leave, no name, he wouldn't stay in the boxings for a long time. For now, I won't leave for the time being. Wu Ming shook his head. No matter what, Wu Ming came this time to find his original body. No matter what, he had to find his original body first. Also, Wu Ming looked in the direction of his room. He still hadn't completed that person's request. Chapter 846. No name, headquarters, Wu Ming's room. Vera sat alone on Wu Ming's bed, quietly waiting outside the window. Gotcha. The door opened, and Vera subconsciously turned her head. It was Wu Ming. Vera used a bit of strength and jumped from the bed to the ground. She ran to Wu Ming's side in an extremely cute manner. Welcome back, Vera said as she pulled on Wu Ming's sleeve. I'm back. But after saying that, Wu Ming felt that something was wrong. This was supposed to be his room. How did Vera manage to turn the tables on him? But it didn't matter. After laughing at himself, Wu Ming squatted down and apologized to Wu Ming. I'm sorry, Vera, for leaving you here alone. Before, when Lily came to find Wu Ming and told him that everyone else had returned, Wu Ming first brought Lily and Vera to Pest's room and found Pest, who was still sulking. Then, Wu Ming brought the 3 of them to his room and found Letitia, who was cleaning the room. After that, Wu Ming, who had the intention to hold a meeting that belonged to No Name, left Vera, who was not a member of No Name, in his room. Although the meeting just now wasn't that important, and Wu Ming did agree to let Vera stay by his side, it was still a matter of principle. Wu Ming bringing the leader of the northern community into his own community was already against the rules in the eyes of ordinary people. He couldn't possibly bring the leader of the northern community into his own community's meeting. It's fine. Regardless of whether Vera understood the depth of Wu Ming's apology or not, Vera didn't seem to blame Wu Ming. Finally, Wu Ming looked at Vera's pair of eyes that were the color of will-o'-the-wisps rather seriously. Then next, let's go settle Maxwell's matter once and for all. After separating from Wu Ming, 16th Nights returned to the previous conference room. Opening the door, as expected, only Hey Bunny and Ren were in the conference room dealing with matters. Mr. 16th Nights, did you and Mr. Villo finish fighting? In fact, it wasn't like what Wu Ming said before, that a long time had passed. He and 16th Nights didn't fight for long. In fact, it was just the principle of happy times always pass by quickly. However, it was also because Wu Ming deliberately shortened the duel time. Although I don't want to admit it, happy times are always short. Shrugging with a smile, 16th Night walked to her seat at the conference table and sat down. In short, I'm here also came to help. With the return of the no-name flag, not only did they need to participate in the bestowment competition in the future, there were also various miscellaneous matters that needed to be dealt with and prepared in advance. Although Wu Ming did not explicitly point this out, 16 Nights was clear about it, and Ren the Black Rabbit was dealing with these matters. Mr. 16th Nights also came to help. Hey Bunny was a little worried since she was a problem child. She looked at Jiao Fei Niao and Haruai Buyao and left. Hey, Black Rabbit, no matter what, I'm still a smart person. Be careful, or I'll rip your ear off. 16 Nights grinned, looking like he was joking at the same time. Ears can't be. Hey Bunny panicked and covered her ears. That 16th nights, come and help. Ren smiled awkwardly and wiped a drop of cold sweat from his forehead. You don't have to take 16th night's words seriously, but if you don't take it seriously, then 16th nights will take it seriously. And there was one more thing to know. Although her fists were fiercer than most of the people in No Name, 16th nights was indeed smart. I misunderstood Mr. 16th nights. It's Hey Bunny's fault. Who told you problem children to always do things that annoy people? 16th nights felt that Hey Bunny's annoyance was actually referring to her ears. Okay, I'll pull your ears if you keep talking. I know. Don't always covet Hey Bunny's ears. Speaking of which. Ren opened his mouth again. Where did Mr. Villo go? 16th nights picked up a document on the table and answered without looking up. He went to find his body. Leaving this sentence that confused Hey Bunny and Ren, 16th nights began to work. North District, 54545 Outer Realm Gate Square. It was already night time. Because the Devil King's attack had already retreated, but after all, the Devil King's attack had just ended, so there were still not many people using the Realm Gate. There were only some community members who came to help Salamandra deal with the aftermath. Among them, there was no lack of community members who belonged to the same class as Salamandra, which was ironic. Black and purple ripples appeared in a corner of the Realm Gate Square. Wuming and Vera walked out of the teleportation gate. After all, they had been here once, so Wuming's teleportation gate could be used. Let's go, Vera, let's walk around the city. Hearing Wuming's words, Vera could not help but tighten her grip on Wuming's sleeves, as if she was afraid of being left behind. Don't worry, Vera, as long as that Maxwell guy appears, I will definitely take care of him this time. Vera hesitated, but in the end, she nodded silently. Before coming to the North District, Wuming told Vera to be bait to lure Maxwell out, but Vera was 100% unwilling. As a last resort, Wuming could only persuade her and repeatedly promise her, as well as entice her by buying snacks. Finally, Vera reluctantly agreed. But there was nothing he could do about it. According to the information he gathered, Maxwell was only interested in Vera, so he could only use Vera as bait. Although it was bait, Wuming was not prepared to let the fish eat the bait. But why did Wuming choose the 54545 Outer Realm as the location of the operation? Firstly, it was because there was a familiar local snake, Salamandra, so it was easier to get things done. Secondly, Wuming was still very worried about the seal of absolute evil. If the enemy's plan was really to release absolute evil, Wuming did not think that the other party would give up. Even if there was no key item to lift the seal, Wuming did not think that the other party would give up so easily. One must know that the box court was a world full of miracles. Maxwell alone, the 4-digit Demon King, had a resurrection ability that Wuming could not understand. He had not found the original body yet, so he was very suspicious of whether the person behind Maxwell and the others had more strange unknown methods. Of course, if Wuming overestimated the other party, then it was nothing. He could just treat it as taking Vera shopping. In short, it was always right to be cautious. Immediately, Wuming brought Vera to stroll around the city. How did the two of them enter the city? Wuming's teleportation door was super useful. Wuming was very interested in the city. After all, the last time he came, Wuming did not have a good look around. Chapter 847. Needless to say, the name of the City of Glowing Flames matched the current situation of the city very well. Numerous ironworks covered the entire city of Glowing Flames. Flames emerged from the ironworks and dyed the entire city of Glowing Flames in the color of flames. Then, Wuming lifted his head and looked at the huge chandelier hanging in the middle of the city. The environment in the North District is extremely harsh. It's said that the City of Glowing Flames actually relies on this huge chandelier to maintain its heat, Wuming explained to Vera. However, as someone from the North District, Vera actually didn't need Wu Ming's introduction. Even so, Vera didn't interrupt him. However, Wu Ming quickly realized this. I almost forgot that you're from the North District. Wu Ming laughed awkwardly. At that moment, Wu Ming stopped explaining to Vera. After all, this was completely showing off in front of Master Guan. The two of them walked like this, taking a stroll and enjoying the scenery around them. The warm colors brought about by the ironworks and the huge chandelier made Wu Ming unable to feel the slightest bit of coldness. Moreover, coupled with the desolate but simple North District land, the visual effect was pretty good to Wu Ming. Wu Ming, who was used to the warm spring scenery of the East District, felt that the scenery in front of him had a different flavor. However, apart from these, there were other sceneries, such as the restored buildings and the buildings that were being restored. To be able to restore the damage caused by the Demon King's attack so quickly, it can be said that they're quite capable. Wu Ming couldn't help but sigh. One had to know that the Demon King's attack on the outer gate of the 54545 division happened during the day. However, the entire city of glowing flames was almost restored by tonight. This was a completely different world from the fire dragon birth ceremony held between the 3999999 division and the 4000000 division. Wu Ming even suspected that the fire dragon birth ceremony was still in ruins. After all, there wasn't any strong community between the outer gates. With no intention of helping, Wu Ming continued to stroll around with Vera. After all, seducing Maxwell was their main goal. However, as they strolled around, Wu Ming and Vera arrived at Salamandra's headquarters in Blaze City. Perhaps due to the lack of manpower, there was only one member of Salamandra in charge of guarding the door. When this member of Salamandra saw a suspicious person loitering in front of his house, he immediately became vigilant. What person? However, when he saw that it was Wu Ming, he immediately exclaimed. Although Wu Ming was not very clear about it, the matter of him and Rin causing a ruckus at the fire dragon birth ceremony in Salamandra could be said to have spread like wildfire throughout Salamandra. This Salamandra member swallowed his saliva and asked with a trembling voice. You. What business do you have with Salamandra? I was passing by, so I came to take a look. Don't worry, I don't mean any harm. Seeing the other party's expression as if he had seen a ghost, Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. There might be a small situation later. After saying this softly, Wu Ming took Vera and left. Looking at Wu Ming and Vera leaving in the distance, the Salamandra member who was guarding the door felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders as he sat on the ground and panted heavily. That day at the fire dragon birth ceremony, he was one of the people who had to endure Wu Ming's pressure. He, who was left with a deep psychological shadow, was able to withstand it. He thought that he was already very impressive. He sat on the ground and rested for a short while. After checking that there were no suspicious people around, he immediately ran back to his home base. It seemed like he was going to report to his family. However, during the brief moment when no one was guarding the main door, a few indistinct figures in black appeared out of thin air at the main door. Following that, the few of them silently walked into Salamandra. One of the black-clothed figures parted ways with the others and quietly walked in the direction that Wu Ming and Vera had left. And Wu Ming, who had already left the entrance of Salamandra, had already strolled around. Wu Ming and Vera began to walk towards the outskirts of Glowing Flame City. Reality proved that there really wasn't much to stroll around in Glowing Flame City that was full of ironworks. Wu Ming's excitement had already passed. It's almost time to go, Vera. Wu Ming suddenly said to Vera, which made Vera extremely puzzled. Vera tilted her head and looked at Wu Ming speechlessly, as if to say, you don't need me to be the bait anymore. After all, the other party might not really be near this door. Let's go somewhere else to take a look. However, as soon as he finished his words, a flame and frost attack suddenly attacked Wu Ming's face. Boom! The scorching flame and the bone-piercing frost reacted and a violent explosion suddenly sounded. The mushroom-shaped explosion floated in the outskirts of Glowing Flame City, which was where Wu Ming and Vera were. Moreover, this explosion attracted the attention of the people in Glowing Flame City. At the same time, it also attracted the attention of the people in black who had sneaked into Salamandra. However, after realizing that the explosion was caused by their companion, the people in black calmed down and continued to sneak in. "Where do you think you're taking my bride?" A clown-like voice rang out, and at the same time, a clown-like figure appeared in the smoke produced by the explosion. "You really don't learn to be obedient, Maxwell." That's right, this person was Maxwell, whom Wu Ming had painstakingly searched for. At this moment, he appeared in front of Wu Ming openly. Hugging Vera, Wu Ming floated by the mushroom cloud that was about to dissipate and looked down at Maxwell, who was faintly visible in the smoke. As early as when he entered Glowing Flame City, Wu Ming had activated his mental power to the maximum. However, Wu Ming also knew that Maxwell had the ability to teleport, so he didn't expect to be able to catch him with his mental power, not to mention that the other party might have the gift of shielding him from detection. Therefore, Wu Ming chose to spread his mental power in a range of 1,000 meters around him. As long as someone approached, Wu Ming would definitely be able to detect it. However, in order to prevent Maxwell from using the gift of shielding him from detection, Wu Ming said, "It's about time to leave." After all, with Wu Ming's current understanding of Maxwell, if he was nearby, he would definitely appear after hearing this sentence. As expected, Maxwell launched an attack on Wu Ming. Moreover, Maxwell seemed to have used the gift of shielding him from detection. Before he launched the attack, Wu Ming didn't notice Maxwell's trace at all. However, with Maxwell's harmless attack and Wu Ming's extremely fast reaction speed, Maxwell's attack didn't have any effect at all. Of course, if it was just a greeting, Maxwell did a great job. "Ah! Let go. My bride." Maxwell covered half of his face with one hand as if his mental state wasn't normal. Regarding this, Wu Ming frowned slightly and seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied. He still wanted to try to get some information about his main body from Maxwell, but Maxwell's mental state was already somewhat abnormal. However, the slightly abnormal Maxwell's intelligence seemed to have decreased, and his actions were more unscrupulous. This large-scale explosion was the best proof. However, even if Maxwell was unscrupulous, it didn't mean that Wu Ming was unscrupulous. He didn't want to fight with Maxwell in Flame City. "Maxwell, I'm going to bring Vera out of Flame City. You have to follow me," Wu Ming deliberately said as if he was mocking him. "If you really can't keep up with me, then Vera will belong to me." Although it was a joke, Vera's face still turned slightly red. After that, without waiting for Maxwell's reply, Wu Ming immediately opened the teleportation door and brought Vera out of Flame City. "My bride!" Maxwell shouted. His figure flashed and he disappeared as well. Without a doubt, he was chasing after Wu Ming, or rather, Vera. Chapter 848. Inside Salamandra, the black-clothed men who had infiltrated Salamandra were quietly moving towards their designated location. Because a large number of people had been sent out to repair Raging Flame Capital, and because the explosion had attracted the attention of Salamandra, more people had been sent out. Coupled with the fact that the black-clothed men were moving towards an extremely remote area, the black-clothed men did not encounter many people along the way. And even if they did encounter people, with the black-clothed men's special gift of stealth, basically no one would be able to discover them. Salamandra's headquarters was a large palace made up of 12 palaces. When the black-clothed men sneaked into the 5th palace, they all stopped. Then, after some planning, they went deeper into the 5th palace. They went deeper and deeper, and finally arrived at a blind spot where there was a bronze statue. "We're here, right?" Among them, the black-clothed man who seemed to be the leader looked at the bronze statue in front of him and quietly asked. If Wu Ming was here, he would definitely be able to recognize the owner of this voice. It was Galgi who he had ruthlessly peeled off a layer of skin during the day. At the same time, Wuming would probably be able to guess what Galgi and the others wanted to do. Break the seal of absolute evil. Most likely, this was the entrance to the seal. However, it was clear that the key items to break the seal could not be gathered, so how could they break the seal? The flag of the Alliance leader who defeated absolute evil returned to No Name, and Galgi also returned the sovereignty of the Ophiuchus constellation and the Leo constellation to Wuming. Even if they could obtain the horn of the starry sea dragon king, there was no way to break the seal. After all, the items to break the seal were indispensable. However, since they came, they must have the confidence to break the seal. "It's right here, Your Highness," Bell said from the side. Then, Galgi looked at the other black-clothed man. "Elder Gu, please, move this bronze statue away." However, the only person who could be called Elder Gu by Galgi was the griffin with the genome tree engraved on its body. Although it was inconceivable, the black-clothed man who Galgi spoke to was indeed the griffin from before. Why would it appear here in human form? It was probably a special gift item. "Yes," Elder Gu answered simply. Then, he walked to the front of the bronze statue. The others also made way for Elder Gu to perform. "Ling, how are the preparations going?" It seemed that was what Galgi was relying on to break the seal of absolute evil. "Everything is ready," Ling said as she took out a gift card from her backpack. Then, Ling started crying to Galgi. "However, Your Highness, that inside is seriously corroding my gift card. I'm afraid it won't be long before my gift card becomes useless." If White Yiksha heard these words, he would definitely be shocked. The gift card's full name was Laplace paper. It wasn't something that could be casually destroyed. However, the thing inside Bell's gift card was actually able to corrode the gift card. What was inside the gift card? Moreover, generally speaking, the gift card could disappear like a servant's spiritual form. It could be taken out at any time without worrying about losing it. However, it seemed that Ling's gift card couldn't do that at all because of the thing inside it. "Is it that serious?" Galgi was surprised. "You should know that we've offered ourselves as gift cards." The last black-clothed man, Aurora, who wanted to attack, No Name, sighed helplessly. For the sake of that, basically everyone except His Highness had taken out their gift cards and used them as containers to move that. First, they put that into a gift card, then used another gift card to store that. After that, they used another gift card to store the gift card. Simply put, it was a nesting doll. However, even so, the speed at which that eroded the gift card was beyond everyone's imagination. Naturally, the changes in the gift card could be perceived by its owner. Along the way, Maxwell's gift card was broken, followed by Aurora and Elder Ge's gift card. In the end, only Ling's gift card could barely be used. His Highness' gift card collected the things in other gift cards. After all, the gift card was very rare. Even Galgi and the others used it to store their personal belongings. After contributing their gift cards, their belongings naturally had to be handed over to Galgi to help store. But this also means that does indeed have an ability beyond our imagination. Galgi was not worried but happy. Although that was the case, Ling's gift card was indeed reaching its limit. In the end, if only that bastard Maxwell could give us Pandora's box. Ling complained. Pandora's box was highly resistant to that. Or, it could be said that as a box that contained all calamities, Pandora's box had the ability to contain all calamities. It could be said that there was no calamity item that Pandora's box couldn't contain. After all, that was the very thing that Pandora's box transported to the lower levels. Although that's the case, Pandora's box is already full of holes. If it continues to be used, I'm afraid it will be destroyed. Galgi had seen what Pandora's box looked like after that was taken out. He didn't dare to imagine that could corrode Pandora's box to such an extent. And Pandora's box still needs to be used to recover that. It can't be completely corroded. After all, this was an item that the higher-ups lent to them and had to be returned to them in the end. Moreover, Maxwell had contributed his own gift card, so no one gossiped. It's clearly something that won't be used for long. It's obvious that the higher-ups are deliberately causing trouble for us, Ling complained rather angrily. The reason for causing trouble was naturally obvious. After all, they lost the item that the higher-ups gave them to unlock absolute evil. It's all that bastard's fault. If he didn't steal our item, we wouldn't have to work so hard. Ling was furious when she thought of that person. Of course, she was talking about Wu Ming. He captured her and Aurora to blackmail Galji into exchanging the item that belonged to No Name. In the end, he took away everything that they needed for their next plan. He was simply a robber. It was precisely because of this that they had no choice but to use that to unlock the seal of absolute evil. Since it's already like this, let's not talk about him anymore. Galji naturally didn't have a good impression of Wu Ming, but what Ling didn't know was that what Wu Ming said to Galji before she fainted still had some effect on Galji. And since we're already here, we can just release that later. Elder Gu advised in a calm voice. This was the only consolation that everyone had. Get ready, I'm going to push it away. As Elder Gu spoke, he exerted force with one hand. The bronze statue that Elder Gu was holding with both hands was pushed away without any movement, or it was lifted and moved away. As a griffin, even if Elder Gu used a special gift to temporarily transform into a human form, he was still a griffin. Naturally, he was extremely powerful. After the bronze statue was pushed away, what was revealed was a spiral staircase that led underground. Elder Gu, I'll have to trouble you and Aurora to bring up the rear. Ling, let's go in. Yes, Your Highness. Elder Gu and Aurora nodded in agreement. Then, Galji and Ling stepped into the spiral staircase. Aurora and Elder Gu seemed to have a tacit understanding. Aurora quietly retreated into the darkness to investigate the surrounding situation, while Elder Gu gently placed the bronze statue back to its original position. Then, Elder Gu also disappeared into the darkness as if no one had ever been here. Chapter 849. Outside of the capital of blazing flames, Wu Ming carried Vera out of the portal and flew in a random direction. One had to know that most of the land in the North District was barren land, and so was the outer sect of the 54545 division. Therefore, there was no need to deliberately find a barren land to fight Maxwell, because places that were not cities were basically barren. My bride. Let go of my bride. The voice was heard before the person could be seen. There were some ripples in the space. In the midst of the distortion, Maxwell appeared at the place where Wu Ming had appeared before. Looking at Wu Ming's departing figure, Maxwell's figure flashed, and along with the distortion of space, Maxwell disappeared again. On Wu Ming's side, seeing that it was about time, he stopped. This place was far enough from the capital of blazing flames, and the surrounding land was barren. After landing on the ground, Wu Ming let go of Vera, who was blushing in his arms. Vera, can you leave for a while? Wu Ming said gently to Vera. Vera tilted her head in confusion at first, then nodded silently. She turned around and waved her hand, opening a door, the realm door. Villo, be careful. After showing concern for Wu Ming, Vera jumped into the realm door with a blushing face and left this place. This period of time together has been an unexpected gain. Wu Ming smiled and shrugged. Yes, that's right, Wu Ming was referring to pure friendship. However, without waiting for Wu Ming to think more, the space not far from Wu Ming distorted, and Maxwell appeared in front of Wu Ming. Maxwell, who appeared in front of Wu Ming, did not attack, but looked around for Vera's figure. In the end, Maxwell looked at Wu Ming with an extremely gloomy expression. Where's my bride? Wu Ming smiled slightly. Of course, she was sent to my bridal chamber. This sentence was like a fuse, causing Maxwell's eyes to suddenly bulge out, and his mental state became even more abnormal. At this moment, it was as if the pain that Maxwell had suffered from Wu Ming's attack had manifested. Maxwell howled at the top of his lungs. Kill you! 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 The ice and fire instantly arrived in front of Wu Ming. They were like hunting dogs, frantically biting at Wu Ming. However, haven't you learned your lesson? Maxwell, didn't I tell you? Wu Ming raised a hand as he spoke. In an instant, a large amount of mana surged and burst out from Wu Ming's palm, blasting the man-eating hound into pieces. This kind of attack is completely useless. In the face of Maxwell's attack, Wu Ming only needed to compress his own mana and release it to break it. Yes, it was a simple release of magic power. I have to say, as a 4-digit demon king, you're really degrading yourself. Other than the fact that his immortality was more than 4 digits, Wu Ming really could not see how Maxwell qualified as a 4-digit demon king. However, Maxwell also realized that Wu Ming was looking down on him. Therefore, he, who was basically blinded by anger, was ready to use his trump card. Maxwell waved his hand, and there was another distortion in space. Individuals appeared one after another around Wu Ming, appearing one after another, like the twinkling stars in the sky. Those were the clones of absolute evil, a pure white 2-headed dragon army. And there were a lot of them. The surrounding desolate land was filled with white figures, and it seemed that they were no less than the absolute evil clones that attacked the Eastern District. In fact, they were even more numerous. Sure enough, these absolute evil clones are your doing. Thinking of the 2-headed dragons that attacked, No Name, Wu Ming was slightly angry. If Wu Ming was not there, perhaps the entire No Name would have suffered. As a member of No Name, Wu Ming would not allow it. But let me tell you, these things are all defeated by me. Even if the number was much more than last time, Wu Ming was confident that he would not be killed or injured by these things. However, what he needed to worry about was that he could not let an absolute evil clone run into the city of raging flames. Wu Ming could not imagine the consequences of an irrational existence with the power of a deity entering the city. At such a close distance, you won't have a chance. Without waiting for Maxwell to finish speaking, the absolute evil clones rushed towards Wu Ming as if they had received an order. Indeed, as Maxwell said, the distance was too close, and Wu Ming did not have time to chant. However, Wu Ming's 12 clones could be instantaneously cast. But, my ability is not limited to authority. In an instant, the absolute evil clones buried Wu Ming, forming a small mountain of absolute evil clones. However, immediately after that, several rays of light came out from the absolute evil clones. Octogod, Great God's Mark, as the voice fell, an explosion occurred from the absolute evil clones. Countless absolute evils were blown to ashes, and not a single drop of blood was left behind. What? The explosion was so inexplicable that Maxwell did not understand what was going on. He saw with his own eyes that Wu Ming, who did nothing, was covered by the absolute evil clones. Do you know the Lune Rune? Wu Ming, who walked out from the center of the explosion unscathed, stretched out his finger and drew in the air as he spoke to Maxwell. The great god Odin sacrificed an eye in exchange for supreme wisdom. It's not that simple. Wu Ming casually tossed the rune that he had drawn, and a few more absolute evil clones that charged forward were instantly burned to ashes and disappeared with the wind. In order to prevent the blood of the absolute evil clones from producing new absolute evil clones, Wu Ming had been using the Lune Rune that could completely destroy the absolute evil clones. Maxwell, who understood what the Lune Rune was, could not help but frown. He was so angry that he was about to lose his mind, but he did not completely lose his mind. He still understood what was futile. Not only that, but Wu Ming also had the powerful power of chanting and the Manchala square that stored many divine persona equipment. No matter how many absolute evil clones there were, they would not be able to do anything to him in a short time. Moreover, Vera might have already escaped. This guy is just trying to piss me off. At that moment, Maxwell had such a thought. To put it bluntly, Maxwell wanted to escape. Wu Ming naturally would not let Maxwell escape. I still say the same thing. As a 4-digit demon king, you are too cheap. You are not worthy of Vera at all. One of Wu Ming's taunts made Maxwell angry again. Ah! Shut up. Vera is mine. Mine. Wu Ming could not help but laugh. As expected, Maxwell would lose his mind when it came to Vera. Wu Ming's previous taunts were all to make Maxwell gradually lose his mind and lower his IQ. After all, an opponent without reason would not escape. Moreover, an opponent without reason would not hold back their strength and would reveal their hidden killer moves. For example, standing in the middle of the absolute evil clones army and being able to command the absolute evil clones. Wu Ming had more or less understood Maxwell's situation. Next, it was time to use the real deal. If Maxwell reacted and allowed any of the absolute evil clones to escape to the capital of raging flames, it would be a big problem. Moreover, with so many absolute evil clones, they should be all of Maxwell's assets. It was just nice to get rid of them all in one go. At that moment, Wu Ming snapped his fingers. Paw. Chapter 850. Along with the almost inaudible vibrations, the entire space seemed to have changed. Maxwell felt a chill run down his spine, as if he had encountered an unprecedented crisis. What did you do? Unlike the previous angry roars, this time Maxwell questioned Wu Ming with a slightly frightened tone. Of course, I'm playing the game of blessings. Wu Ming lowered his raised hand and answered in a rather pleased tone. Immediately after, Wu Ming's devilish smile was reflected in Maxwell's eyes, causing the temperature on Maxwell's back to drop by quite a bit. Do you have the authority of the organizer? It was understandable that Maxwell was shocked. Not everyone could obtain the authority of the organizer, not to mention Wu Ming, who had just joined the box court not long ago. Although Maxwell was a 4-digit demon king, he didn't have the authority of the organizer. There was no other reason. Although Maxwell had been in the box court longer than Wu Ming, he and Wu Ming were both considered newbies. However, this once again proved how cheap Maxwell, the 4-digit demon king, was. Wu Ming was different from Maxwell. As the root dragon, the box court naturally wouldn't be stingy with granting Wu Ming the authority of the organizer. This was an intangible benefit. It seems like you don't know that I have the authority of the organizer. But soon after, Wu Ming felt relieved. Ever since he used the authority of the organizer on Wu Ming, he didn't use it again. After all, Wu Ming didn't need the authority of the organizer. Over time, the authority of the organizer was basically forgotten by Wu Ming. While Wu Ming was still thinking about how to deal with Maxwell, he slowly thought of using the authority of the organizer to deal with Maxwell. In the box court world, the box court system was absolute. Even the humans in the final trial had to abide by the rules of the box court. If he had to find someone who wasn't restricted by the box court, it would definitely be Wu Ming. Of course, he had to be in his true body. Thank you for sending me these bodies of absolute evil. Judging from the number, this should be all of them. Not only will I be able to eliminate them all in one go, but I can also bury them with you. This is killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Smack, Wu Ming raised his hand and snapped his fingers again. A white contract document floated down from the sky and landed in front of Maxwell. Maxwell subconsciously caught it and began to read it. Gift game name, challenge game contestant, Maxwell contestants winning condition, defeat the organizer at the designated venue. Host's victory condition, the contestant cannot defeat the host within the specified time limit. Participant penalty for failure, death oath, respecting the above content, based on the glory, flag, and authority of the organizer, this game of blessings will be held. Seal of Originate God. This was an extremely simple bestowment competition. All one needed to do was defeat the organizer. It was as simple and crude as those demon kings who abused the organizer's authority to attack ordinary citizens. But today, the victim was a demon king with a 4-digit number. Rip, angrily tearing the contract to shreds, Maxwell went completely mad. Ah! Hearing this heart-wrenching cry, people who didn't know would think that Maxwell had suffered a great grievance. What is it? Lord Demon King, you don't even have the courage to participate in the bestowment competition. As long as you defeat me, you can win. Wu-Ming continued to mock Maxwell in a mocking tone, even though he was forced to participate in the gift match. However, defeating Wu-Ming was extremely difficult. The manchal of phalanx that contained thousands of divine weapons, the divine blade of salvation, the evolved divine power obtained from killing a god, the rune script that the god Odin sacrificed one of his eyes, the martial arts that originated from the Shadow Queen Skaha, the game system magic that came from an unknown world, and the spiritual base that reached the peak of the servant. In terms of weapons, Maxwell was not as good as Wu-Ming. In terms of magic, Maxwell was not as good as Wu-Ming. In terms of close combat, Maxwell was not as good as Wu-Ming. In terms of home field advantage, Maxwell was not as good as Wu-Ming. Maxwell's bestowment could not cause any damage to Wu-Ming. The only cheat like immortality and miraculous space jump also lost its effect after Maxwell was pulled into the game of blessings by Wu-Ming. Although Maxwell didn't have a comprehensive understanding of silent wonder, he knew one thing. In a head-on battle, he absolutely couldn't win against silent wonder. In short, Maxwell could only die now. You want me to die? It's not that easy. Maxwell suddenly raised his head. His eyes were slightly protruding and bloodshot. Maxwell waved his hand, and the army of absolute evil avatars ran toward the direction of Blazing Flame City. You're right. Someone needs to be buried with me. People who were close to death tended to become more clear-headed. It seemed that Maxwell was like that. He actually thought of letting the army of absolute evil avatars attack Blazing Flame City. If so many absolute evil avatars attacked Blazing Flame City, Wu-Ming was sure that Blazing Flame City would be destroyed. This was what Wu-Ming was worried about before. But, do you think I didn't think of this, Maxwell? Wu-Ming crossed his arms and smiled. Other than that, he did nothing else. When the absolute evil avatars rushed to a certain place, it was as if there was an invisible wall blocking their way. The absolute evil avatars collectively stopped. Bam 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 bam. However, there were still many two-headed dragons who crashed into the wall and let out miserable shrieks. Roar roar roar. Along with the collision of the two-headed dragons, the entire space changed. Like raindrops falling into the water, the entire space of the barren land where Wu-Ming, Maxwell, and the two-headed dragon army were changed completely amidst the ripples. This wasn't the barren land outside Blazing Flame City. This was clearly an endless ice field filled with icicles. The invisible wall that blocked the absolute evil avatars was a layer of ice that was more than 10 meters thick. Phew, a gust of cold wind blew and Maxwell couldn't help but shrink his body. Now, he understood why he felt a chill down his spine. It wasn't because he was overly afraid. Instead, it was because the environment around him had been changed. The contract clearly states that you have to defeat the organizer at the stipulated venue. You've already arrived at the so-called stipulated venue, Wu-Ming said, and a contract appeared before him. The previous contract had been torn apart by Maxwell, but that didn't affect the contents of the contract at all. Then, Wu-Ming tossed the contract aside and picked up the staff of Anziergen that had appeared beside him out of nowhere. Everything just now was an illusion created by the Lune rune. You've already arrived at this tomb long before I issued the contract. This was the fixed enchantment of the staff of Anziergen, the fifth layer of ice field in Nazalic. The staff of Anziergen was retrieved by Wuming from his dragoness space after the Lune Rune's illusion was activated. The Lune Rune was inscribed on the ground by Wuming's mental strength, which was why Maxwell didn't see it. Alright, Maxwell. Are you ready to meet your death? Chapter 851. Salamandra's headquarters, the fifth palace of the 12 palaces, the underground passage that Galji and Ling entered. The staircase leading underground extended in a spiral pattern. Because of the surrounding darkness, Galji took out the illumination gift from his gift card and walked up the stairs with Ling. After walking for a long time, the two still didn't see the bottom. We're not there yet, Your Highness. Ling held her gift card that was starting to heat up and said worriedly. Can't hold on any longer. Galji stopped and turned to look at the gift card in Ling's hand. Ling's gift card was no longer the same color as before. The entire card was red and there was a faint trace of heat. If you can't hold on any longer, then use my gift card to replace it. Although Galji's gift card contained other people's items, if he really couldn't hold on any longer, he had to use it when necessary. After all, he couldn't let that come out here. Regardless of the losses, if that really came out, he and Ling would be in great danger. It's okay, Your Highness. My gift card can still hold on for a while. Let's go quickly. Ling wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled to show that she was fine. At that moment, Galji didn't say anything more. Right now, they had to reach the bottom quickly. After walking for a while, Galji and Ling finally saw the bottom. It was an underground space. On one of the walls in the underground space, the words, "Between the Stars," were engraved. Not only that, but there were also 5 sealed doors and a piece of parchment on the wall engraved with the words. As mentioned before, even humans in the final trial had to follow the rules of the box court. After absolute evil was sealed, it naturally left behind a contract document. Of course, this parchment was the contract document that sealed absolute evil, and these 5 doors were probably the entrance to unlock absolute evil's seal. However, the correct entrance could only be one of them. However, Galji and Ling had no intention of solving this gift game at all. They even stood motionless in the same place. If we had the item to unlock the seal, I'm afraid we would have to unravel the mystery of this game to unlock the seal. Galji couldn't help but sigh. However, with Belle around, the mystery of the game of blessings will naturally be solved easily. Belle, who was standing behind Galji, smiled proudly. It seemed that the young girl had unparalleled confidence in her wisdom. But shortly after, her expression changed. Your Highness, my gift card can't hold on much longer. Ling's expression changed as she said to Galji with a sad face. Galji looked at Belle's gift card. The gift card, which was originally red from the heat, had now turned black. It was an ominous shade of black. Ling, place your gift card in front of the 5 doors. Be quick, Galji ordered. Belle's gift card and the others' gift cards were all broken, so it wasn't wise to release that one here. Now, he could only throw caution to the wind and place Belle's gift card together with the thing inside it. When the thing corrodes Belle's gift card, it will automatically come out. Quick, Ling, put it down and we'll leave as soon as possible. If they stayed any longer, they would probably be buried with the seal of absolute evil. Yes. Yes. Ling immediately used her gift of distance control and the gift card in her hand appeared in front of the 5 doors. Let's go. After Galji finished speaking, Ling immediately came to Galji's side and grabbed his arm. Ling's gift was activated again and the two instantly disappeared on the spot and returned to the first step of the spiral staircase. The reason why they didn't use the gift card to go to the bottom was that Ling didn't know how deep the spiral staircase was and couldn't accurately control the distance. Now that they had walked through it once, Ling had an idea of the distance from the bottom to the top. Hence, Ling brought Galji to the first step. Dong dong. Galji immediately knocked on the bronze statue blocking the entrance. This was his and Elder Ge's secret signal. A few seconds later, the bronze statue was moved away and Galji and Ling immediately came out. After Galji and Bell came out, Gulao immediately put the bronze statue back in place. "Your Highness, how is it?" Aurora, who came with Elder Gu, immediately asked. "It's ready. Let's leave quickly," Galji said without hesitation. Elder Gu and Aurora nodded. Then, the four of them immediately followed the original path and left Salamandra. At the gate of Salamandra, the member of Salamandra who went to report had already returned to his post. They actually said to let them do whatever they want. Even if we are allies with no name, they can't just do whatever they want. Although he complained like this, he knew that even though Wu Ming's community was a nameless, no name, he wasn't some insignificant character. Whether they were afraid of the other party, or they were allies, in short, Mandela's order was to wait and see. Anyway, this guard was not the leader of Salamandra, so he didn't have to worry about it. He just had to listen to the orders from above and watch his own gate. But right after that, he heard soft footsteps coming from behind him. He immediately turned around, but what greeted him was a fist that was not the size of a normal person. "Who?" Before he could shout, he was immediately knocked out by the fist. The one who knocked him out was naturally Elder Gu in his human form. "It's time to go, Elder Gu," Galji said behind Elder Ge's back. There was no telling when that would come out, so it was better to leave quickly. Elder Gu naturally understood this point, so he didn't kill him. He only knocked out the member of Salamandra who was guarding the door. The soft footsteps were caused by them walking too quickly. But since they were already at the gate, there was no need to hide it. "Your Highness, do we still need to wait for Maxwell?" Aurora suddenly asked. "In my opinion, that guy probably ran away a long time ago. How could he beat that bastard?" Ling pouted. They naturally knew that Maxwell went to find Wu Ming. With Maxwell leading Wu Ming, they were happy to see this, so they let Maxwell do whatever he wanted. And Ling and the others, who had seen how powerful Wu Ming was, naturally knew that Maxwell could not beat Wu Ming. That was why Ling said that Maxwell ran away a long time ago. As for being killed or captured by Wu Ming, it was not realistic. After all, Maxwell's immortality and escape ability were top-notch. "That's true, Your Highness. We should hurry and retreat," Elder Gu also advised. At that moment, Galji nodded and the four of them prepared to leave. "But, I really didn't expect you to have such high expectations for Maxwell." Chapter 852. Wu Ming's voice came from the shadows of the street in front of them, which made the four of them immediately alert. Then, Wu Ming's figure walked out of the shadows of the night, and Wu Ming appeared in front of the four of them. "You still found us in the end." Galji closed his eyes slightly. Wu Ming being able to defeat Maxwell and find them in time was also within Galji's expectations, but the probability was very small. "It's all thanks to Maxwell." Wu Ming smiled. If it weren't for Maxwell, he really wouldn't have known that Galji and the others would sneak into Salamandra tonight. However, Galji didn't understand Wu Ming's words. Although they weren't in the same group, Maxwell shouldn't have deliberately exposed their location. After all, this was related to the plan of the higher-ups. However, there was another possibility. For example, Maxwell had been captured by Wu Ming. "Where's Maxwell?" Galji asked Wu Ming. Wu Ming answered Galji straightforwardly. "I caught him." Wu Ming's eyes weren't perfunctory at all, as if he was telling the truth. Seeing that Wu Ming didn't seem to be lying, Belle, Gulao, and Aurora were shocked. They knew best how difficult it was to deal with Maxwell. He was born between life and death, and the strongest demon in the North District had been entangled by Maxwell for 100 years. However, Wu Ming, who had only met Maxwell a few times, had actually captured him. How could they not be shocked? However, this gave them a signal. Wuming's strength was probably beyond their imagination. At that moment, the three of them immediately became vigilant. Guolao's black cloak bulged slightly, as if he was about to remove his human form and turn back into a griffin. A bulge also appeared under Aurora's black cloak, which looked like a weapon. Belle grabbed Galji's hand, ready to use the gift of distance control to take him away if something went wrong. On the other hand, Galji didn't panic at all. He didn't look like someone who had been forced into a corner by Wuming. Anyway, we're not in cahoots with him. You've helped me by capturing him. I have no intention of helping you. Wuming then looked at Galji. Instead, it's you guys who sneaked into Salamandra. What are you up to? I should have told you to stop messing around with the people around me, right? The people around Wuming didn't just refer to no name. It could be understood that the people around Wuming were also included in the category of people around him. To put it simply, Wuming didn't want to see Galji again, at least not in this way. Galji didn't say anything and just watched Wuming quietly. However, Belle, Elder Gu, and Aurora, who had a tacit understanding with Galji, were ready to attack. Wuming didn't want to waste any more time with Galji's group and took the lead. Wuming didn't move at all. Instead, he relied on his mental strength to transport a large amount of Lune runes from the ground to Galji's group. There's something below. Aurora, who was a mage, was the first to discover the Lune runes underground. She yelled and immediately flew up with magic. At this moment, the explosive Lune runes underground were activated. Boom, smoke and dust filled the entrance of Salamandra, concealing Galji's group of 4. However, this didn't affect Wuming, who possessed mental strength at all. He easily saw Elder Gu, who had transformed into a griffin, charging toward him. Suddenly, rows of translucent squares appeared behind Wuming. Mjolnir, Mjolnir, Wuming yelled, and a short-handled hammer emerged from one of the squares. Wuming grasped it in his hand. Then, Wuming swung the short hammer heavily at Glea, who had transformed into a griffin and was charging over. In an instant, lightning erupted from the hammer like a wave, and countless thunderbolts engulfed Glea and drowned him. Glea hurriedly retreated from the range of the thunderbolts. However, his body was full of scorch marks and traces of thunderbolts that hadn't dissipated. Ugh! This caused Glea to whimper in pain, because the lightning was still taking effect in Glea's body. Clang, clang, along with the sound of a harp, the thunderbolts in Glea's body gradually disappeared. Wuming turned to the source of the sound. It turned out that it was the harp that Aurora had retrieved from under the black cloak and played. Needless to say, the harp must be a special gift to be able to eliminate the thunderbolts of Thor's hammer. Mjolnir, also known as Thor's hammer, was a weapon used by Thor, the thunder god of Northern European mythology. It was said to be made of rare metals from Northern Europe and the wood of the world tree. It could be said to be the strongest weapon in Northern European mythology. The fact that Glea could withstand the thunderbolts of Thor's hammer was enough to prove that he wasn't weak. So, can you still withstand the next attack? Wuming yelled and threw Mjolnir back into the square behind him. Shortly after, one of the squares in the Manchala square behind Wuming moved again. A spear, or rather, a throwing spear, fell into Wuming's palm. Gungnir, Wuming aimed the spear at Glea and threw it. What's that name? Galji instantly guessed what the spear that Wuming threw was. That's right, the legendary weapon held by the Norse god Odin. It was also known as the Gungnir of the god's declaration. However, what was important wasn't who held it, but the ability of Gungnir. Gungnir didn't have any fancy attributes. It only had one characteristic, which was that it would never miss. It was extremely simple and powerful. Old Glea. Belle yelled at Glea hurriedly. I got it. Glea said, flapping his griffin wings, and hurriedly flying in another direction. However, Glea also knew that Odin's Gungnir was a divine spear that would never miss. It was impossible to dodge and would definitely hit the enemy's weapon. Therefore, no matter how Glea dodged, it would be useless unless he was hit or blocked. However, they didn't have any defensive gifts. Wu Ming had also extorted the Leo's sovereignty of the sun from Galji. But Glea, who knew this, still chose to dodge. Gungnir, who had been thrown out by Wu Ming, followed closely behind Glea, and its speed became faster and faster. In the end, Glea actually saw the opportunity and turned sideways, allowing Gungnir to pierce through his thigh. Got to say, this was indeed a way to deal with the Gungnir. Glea's thigh was only pierced, and his wings and forelimbs were fine, so it didn't affect his battle capabilities much. The Gungnir that hit Glea automatically flew back to Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming tossed it casually into the Manchola square. I don't want to continue playing with you guys. Since the other party didn't reveal any more trump cards, there was no need to do so. Chapter 853. As Wu Ming spoke, a large number of grids appeared in the Manchola formation behind him. Countless weapons automatically appeared and aimed at Galji and the others. With that, countless high-grade armaments shot towards Galji, Belle, and Aurora like bullets from a machine gun. Belle. Aurora, who was flying in the air, shouted. She played her harp and opened an extremely weak barrier a few meters in front of her. Her purpose was naturally to cover Belle and take Galji away. As long as Galji and Belle left, she, who was flying in the sky, would be able to escape easily. As for Galji, he had already flown far away, so everyone would be able to escape successfully. I got it. Belle nodded fiercely and immediately activated her ability. However, she and Galji remained where they were. What's going on? Belle was rather flustered and at a loss. On the other hand, Galji saw that the surrounding exploded ground was filled with Lune runes again. He didn't know if it came with the explosion runes or if it was sent by Wu Ming when he and Wu Ming were fighting just now. Anyway, it was these runes that limited Belle's range of control. Galji used all his strength to kick the ground. A large number of Lune runes lost their light. It seemed that they had been destroyed and lost their effectiveness. However, countless Lune runes appeared immediately after, like an endless supply of leaks. What? It seemed that Wu Ming had set up a large number of these Lune runes to trap them. As expected, someone who was able to capture Maxwell after just a few meetings, how could he not have prepared a method to counter Belle's gift? However, there was no time for Belle and Galji to panic and think because Aurora's defensive barrier was extremely weak and was instantly broken by countless Godspark weapons. This was Wu Ming's strength. They had finally witnessed it today. For a moment, the few of them who couldn't leave and had no defensive means were at their wits' end. Even so, Belle and Aurora instantly appeared in front of Galji and protected him behind them. You? Galji was shocked. A friend in need was a friend indeed. Under such circumstances, the fact that the two of them could still protect Galji without any hesitation meant that their relationship with Galji was no longer as simple as a master-servant relationship. Only close companions could describe the two of them as such. However, it wasn't just Belle and Aurora. Glea was the same. Glea, who had flown far away because of Gungnir's pursuit, suddenly rushed back at an extremely fast speed. Roar! Along with a dragon's roar, Glea's griffin body shone brightly. His entire body began to expand and transform. In the end, Glea turned into a giant dragon and stood in front of Galji and the others, taking on Wu Ming's weapon barrage. Elder Go. As a young girl, Belle looked at Glea, who had blocked the damage for them with heartache. Glea was the one who had blocked the Lune rune explosion for them. Then, Belle calmed down and looked at Galji. Your Highness, what should we do now? Glea used his life to create an opportunity for them, so Galji had to give instructions on what to do. No matter if it was to attack or retreat, Galji had to make the decision. They were blocked by Wu Ming as soon as they stepped out of Salamandra. Belle's gift wasn't effective at the moment, Aurora wasn't of much use, and they couldn't defeat Galgi in a head-on battle. Glea was also enduring the pain of taking on the weapon barrage for the three of them. Given the current situation, it seemed like retreating to the base of Salamandra for the time being was the wisest choice. However, such a huge commotion at the entrance of Salamandra naturally attracted the attention of the insiders. As a mage, Aurora could clearly sense that there were already many people rushing over here. Besides, if they hid inside Salamandra, they would eventually be discovered, especially when Wuming was still here. Besides, they couldn't give up on Glea. Get ready, I'm going to forcibly release another cosmology. Galgi's eyes suddenly became cold. The so-called another cosmology was another universe, and it was also a powerful force that Wuming didn't know about in the box garden world. It could be understood as a gift that could infinitely magnify one's own universe to interfere with the outside world. This explanation seemed similar to the inherent enchantment that materialized the mind of a magician, but at the end of the day, another cosmology was many times more powerful than the inherent enchantment. This was because the simulation of another cosmology was infinitely magnifying the cosmology one belonged to. This was not something that a mere magician's spiritual landscape could compare to. Moreover, the holder of another cosmology was basically the center of every group of gods, or rather, those who possessed another cosmology often had the ability to become the center of a group of gods. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that another cosmology was one of the most powerful forces in the box garden world. But, Your Highness, Ling couldn't help but worry. As one of the strongest forces in the box garden, each another cosmology had its own restrictions and conditions. In order to use another cosmology, the restrictions had to be lifted or the conditions had to be met. And Galgi's another cosmology required him to hold the sovereignty of the sun in order to activate it. If it was forcibly activated, failure was considered good, but serious injury or even death was very likely. However, their only two sovereignty of the sun, Leo's and Ophiuchus's, had been threatened by Wuming. In the current situation, it was extremely difficult for Galgi to activate another cosmology. However, looking at Glea, who was unconscious and was only instinctively protecting them, Galgi couldn't help but clench his fists. Since they had been forced to this extent, Galgi would feel bad if he didn't teach Wuming a lesson. His another cosmology was a powerful trump card that could even kill the Demon King in one blow. Even Maxwell, who had an extremely powerful immortality, was no exception. Wuming was just a mere spirit. No matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to withstand the damage caused by the another cosmology if he was caught off guard. If he was successfully launched and hit, he would die without a doubt. It could be regarded as relieving his worries. Anyway, that had been placed at the entrance of the seal of absolute evil. As long as the time was up, that would erode the seal of absolute evil, and absolute evil would break out of the seal. First, they had to get through the difficulties in front of them. Then, they could fish in troubled waters and escape from here. As for using the Pandora's box that Maxwell carried to retrieve that. What a joke, Galgi and the others were preparing to take advantage of the chaos after unlocking the seal of absolute evil to eliminate Maxwell, who was sent to monitor them, and escape from the control of the higher-ups. Therefore, at present, as long as they released another cosmology, eliminated Wuming in one fell swoop, found Maxwell who was captured by Wuming, and eliminated him, they would be completely free. Do you dare to bet? Galgi suddenly asked. Your Highness, no matter what, I will be by your side. Ling looked at Galgi with an extremely determined gaze. Me too, Your Highness. Aurora echoed. Galgi smiled. Then, Galgi immediately gave orders. Aurora, when I say start later, move Gulao away. Ling, please help me block the Godhead equipment that might break through the moment Gulao is moved away. Yes, Your Highness. Ling and Aurora responded in unison. Victory or defeat depended on this. Chapter 854. Wu Ming, who was continuously attacking Galji and the others through the manchal of Phalanx's weapon salvo, intentionally lowered the level of the weapon he released when he saw Glaya blocking in front of Galji and the others. After all, Wu Ming didn't want to kill anyone in the first place. The weapon salvo he fired at Galji and the others was just for show. At most, it would only injure them severely, but it was impossible to kill them. But who would have thought that Glaya would suddenly rush in front of Galji and the others? However, even if he intentionally lowered the level of the weapon he released, it was not something Glaya's body could withstand. Just as Wu Ming was about to stop the projection of the manchal of Phalanx, Glaya's entire dragon body seemed to be pulled by an external force and moved away. Then, a ray of light charged at Wu Ming. Wu Ming subconsciously threw defensive weapons from the manchal of Phalanx, but the ray of light instantly passed through these defensive weapons and arrived in front of Wu Ming. This is. Not only was Wu Ming surprised that the ray of light penetrated the defensive weapons, but he was also surprised by the power contained in the ray of light. It was a power he had never seen before, as if it was the power of a universe. I didn't expect Galji to have such a trump card. After Wu Ming finished speaking, his entire body was covered by the ray of light, and then he disappeared. Your Highness. We did it. Belle, who had blocked a few weapons for Galji, stood in front of Galji and looked excitedly at Wu Ming's disappearance behind the fallen shield. Is that so? Galji forced a smile and knelt on the ground with a thud. He made the right bet. Although it didn't seem to be very powerful, the simulated cosmology was successfully released. However, the price of forcibly releasing the simulated cosmology was not small. Your Highness. Belle hurriedly supported Galji with a worried expression. Quick, Belle, you and Aurora go check on old Go first. Galji knew that he wouldn't die for a while, but Glaya looked like he was about to die. Glaya had already reverted from his dragon form to his griffin form. His wings and back were badly mutilated, and the griffin had fallen into a coma. Don't worry, Your Highness. I've already given Glaya a simple treatment. The most important thing now is to leave this place. Aurora used magic to carry Glaya and landed beside Galji. Galji nodded and stood up with Belle's help. That's good. Let's leave quickly. And at this moment, where Wu Ming had disappeared, a sacred sword filled with a powerful and ancient aura appeared. If I remember correctly, this should be a weapon called the Divine Blade of Salvation, right? Ling pondered. Then, she smiled. Looks like Your Highness killed the opponent and the gift automatically dropped. It seemed like an extremely unreliable way to kill monsters and steal treasures, but it was very possible in the box court world. After all, gifts were different from individuals. Some special gifts would automatically drop after the death of the original owner. It seemed like this was the case with the Divine Blade of Salvation. Your Highness, I'll go and get that sword. Ling entrusted Galji to Aurora and ran in the direction of the Divine Blade of Salvation. Wait, Ling. Galji subconsciously felt a trace of uneasiness and wanted Ling to come back. After all, there was another possibility for the gift to drop apart from killing someone. For example, the original owner of the gift was not dead. Looks like that universe-like power is your trump card, Galji. Wu Ming's voice entered Galji's ears. In an instant, a black and purple teleportation door appeared. Wu Ming walked out from it and appeared beside the Divine Blade of Salvation. He held the Divine Blade of Salvation in his hand. Ha! Ling couldn't help but stop and look at Wu Ming blankly. Wasn't he killed by His Highness's another cosmology? Ling! Come back! Galji snarled. Ling reacted instantly to Galji's roar, but the runes on the ground were still in effect. These runes weren't powerful Lune runes. Instead, they were runes that limited distances. They were often used around people who lived in seclusion to prevent outsiders from entering and could only wander within a certain range. This was why Ling's gift of controlling distances was ineffective. If one moved within a set distance of a certain range, it might still be effective. But if one moved beyond this range, it was equivalent to being ineffective. This was why Ling's gift was as though ineffective. At that moment, Ling had no choice but to turn around and run toward Galji. But how could Wu Ming let her go? Along with the sound of chains, Ling felt a heavy blow to the back of her head. In an instant, she felt as though someone had struck her from behind with a stick and she gradually lost consciousness. Then, countless silver-whitish chains like giant pythons bound Ling tightly. Even her nose and eyes were completely covered, making her look like a mummy. Then, Ling snapped her fingers and a purplish-black ripple appeared beneath her feet. She and the pseudo-heaven lock fell into it together. Ling! Galji took a step forward agitatedly, but due to his injuries, he couldn't help but kneel on the ground. Fortunately, Aurora was there to support him. Don't worry, I'm not that cruel to kill her. I only captured her. Wu Ming approached Galji step by step with the blade of salvation in his hand. Don't come over. Aurora raised her courage and roared at Wu Ming with her harp. However, this didn't have any effect on Wu Ming's advance. How about another deal? Wu Ming ignored Aurora and turned to Galji. Tell me your purpose in entering Salamandra and the sequence of events. Don't even think about it. Aurora wanted to attack again, but Galji grabbed her arm. Galji silently shook his head, indicating that Aurora shouldn't make any unnecessary resistance. Simply put, she should endure and not get hurt for no reason. At this time, the last Salamandra troops to arrive surrounded Galji, Wu Ming, and the others. Stop! Mandela shouted in high spirits. Then, he was glared at by Wu Ming. However, Mandela had to endure. Take these people down. Mandela pointed at Galji and the others. Then, the members of Salamandra stepped forward and prepared to take Galji and the others into custody. At this time, there was a violent tremor inside Salamandra. Rumble, the earth shook. Chapter 855. Galji looked at the epicenter and found that it was the fifth palace. That direction. Not good. Mandela's expression suddenly changed as he looked in the same direction. Quick, inform everyone to evacuate the residents of Blazing Flame City. Get everyone to leave Blazing Flame City immediately. Move quickly. Mandela calmly gave the order. After that, the troops of Salamandra ignored Galji and Wu Ming and began to carry out Mandela's orders. After that, Mandela looked deeply at Wu Ming, Galji, and the others, and then rushed into Salamandra. As you can see, the seal of absolute evil has been broken. Seeing that the outsiders had left, Galji spoke. Galji noticed that Wu Ming's expression had also changed, but Wu Ming's expression was neither fear nor shock, but joy and melancholy. I think I know how you broke the seal of absolute evil, Galji. This was because Wu Ming felt the aura of his main body. It seemed that his main body was in Salamandra, which was why Wu Ming was so happy. Only Wu Ming's main body, the root dragon, was immune to the rules of the box court, and could break the seal of absolute evil without the tools to break the seal. Let's change the deal. Tell me all the information about absolute evil. Since the seal had been broken, it was time to collect information to deal with absolute evil. Wu Ming snapped his fingers. Along the way, a white contract document appeared in Galji's hand. Organizer Authority. Seeing this contract document, Galji was shocked. He now knew why Wu Ming could capture Maxwell. It was because of the Organizer Authority. Then, Wu Ming took out the staff of Ain Zurgong and tapped it lightly on the ground. Galji, Aurora, and Glea disappeared on the spot. They were forcibly sent to their own space by Wu Ming. Then, Wu Ming chanted the words of the spirit. My contract, my kin, I am the place where the tributaries converge. Bind with me, heed my call, obey my command, appear. Then, a figure appeared behind Wu Ming. It was Wu Ming's 8th incarnation, the king. The Wu Ming that Galji had destroyed was actually one of Wu Ming's kin clones. Only the blade of salvation that the clone at that time was given by the main body. Then, Wu Ming handed the staff of Ain's Urgong to the clone. The clone nodded and tapped the ground with the tip of the staff. The clone also disappeared. He went to the intrinsic barrier to make a deal with Galji and the others, or rather, to act as the host of the game of gifts. However, the gift competition that Wu Ming forced Galji and the others to participate in was different from the one that he forced Maxwell to participate in. This time, Wu Ming prepared the gift competition for Galji and the others only to fish for information. Wu Ming even cautiously divided the three of them into different spaces. Although it was a temporary imprisonment, Wu Ming was not prepared to let Galji and the others go so easily this time. Firstly, the disaster they caused this time was quite serious. Secondly, Galji unlocked the seal of absolute evil. Not only did he release Wu Ming's main body, but he also released the remaining black mud that was attached to Wu Ming's main body. Back then, the black mud exploded deep into Wu Ming's body. In such a short time, it was impossible to clean up the black mud. Even if the inside of his body was cleaned up, it was inevitable that there would be black mud outside of his body. Perhaps they had used the corrosive power of the black mud to erode the seal of absolute evil. In the box, one had to abide by the rules of the box, but Wu Ming was an exception. However, Wu Ming would not take the initiative to break or challenge the rules of the box. Moreover, Wu Ming would never have thought that the other party would use the black mud left on his main body as the key to unlocking the seal of absolute evil. The black mud and Wu Ming were of the same origin. If Wu Ming was not affected by the box system, then the black mud was also not affected by the black mud. However, this was not a big deal. If absolute evil came into contact with the black mud, it would be very troublesome. This was the reason why Wu Ming was depressed. Without staying any longer, Wu Ming immediately took action and flew toward the place filled with the aura of his main body. Salamandra, 5th Palace, inside the sealed passage of absolute evil. Countless black mud rippled against the walls like ocean waves, causing the ground to tremble continuously. A 3-meter-tall black monster with 3 heads was crawling in the black mud as if it was swimming in a comfortable ocean. Every time the monster swayed, black mud would flow out from under the monster's body and spread to the surroundings. Gradually, the entire sealed passage was submerged in black mud, but the monster did not feel any discomfort. It continued to swim in the Black Sea as if it did not want to care about anything on the ground. It was as if it just wanted to stay here. However, excessive black mud poured into the ground through the gaps of the bronze statue and began to cover everything on the ground. Anything that came into contact with the black mud, whether it was a person or an object, all burned up. The entire salamandra fell into a sea of fire. What is this? Help! However, before these people who were infected by the black mud could shout, the flames burned them to ashes. Get away from the black mud. Mandela, who was a step late, saw the situation and immediately began to order the people of Salamandra. Don't take anything with you. Everyone immediately evacuate from Salamandra and cover the evacuation of the residents of Flame Capital. Mandela once again ordered the internal members of Salamandra. At the rate the black mud was spreading, it would not be long before the entire Salamandra, or even the entire Flame Capital, would be corroded. At that moment, the members of Salamandra immediately acted as if they could not wait to leave this place immediately. Looking at Salamandra that was almost empty and had fallen into a sea of fire, Mandela could not help but sigh. There will be a day when Salamandra's headquarters will be covered in a sea of fire. After that, Mandela continued to walk inside. Sir Mandela. Mandela's confidants were puzzled by Mandela's behavior. If he continued to go deeper, he was afraid that he would not be able to come out later. The leader is still inside. I will go find her. Mandela said without turning his head. We will go together, Sir Mandela. Yes, Sir Mandela. Let's go together. Mandela's confidants immediately followed Mandela's footsteps. However, Mandela was furious. What are you doing? Can't you see that everyone who is touched by the black mud is burning? Retreat. Even the members of Salamandra who had the bloodline of the fire dragon could not hold on for more than a second. This showed how powerful the black mud was. However, one of Mandela's confidants immediately answered. But, Sir Mandela, we cannot abandon you, nor can we abandon Lady Shadora. The others did not speak, but their eyes were extremely serious. They looked like they would not leave no matter what Mandela said. It could only be said that they were indeed members of Salamandra who had the bloodline of the fire dragon. Their stubbornness was exactly the same as Mandela, who also had the bloodline of the fire dragon. At this moment, Wuming flew in. Leave Shadora to me. Hurry up and evacuate the residents of Flame Capital. Don't let the black mud touch them. Otherwise, it will be over. As Wuming spoke, he flew in from the back. He did not stop all the way and flew directly into the interior. Obviously, he did not give Mandela and the others a chance to choose. Then I will leave Shadora to you. Mandela was also a reasonable person. Since Wuming wanted to go in, he would be a burden if he followed him in. Everyone, follow me to evacuate the residents of Flame Capital. With that, Mandela left with his confidants. Wuming, on the other hand, went deep inside Salamandra. Looking at the black mud that kept spreading in front of him, what Wuming was worried about still happened. Chapter 856. If the black root mud was taken out on its own, it wouldn't cause much damage. It only had a special effect on Wuming. At most, it could destroy the seal of absolute evil like Galgi and the others. That was because the black root mud was attached to Wuming's body. If it was removed from Wuming's body, even if it was placed on the seal of absolute evil, it wouldn't cause any damage to the seal of absolute evil. The black root mud was neither good nor evil. It only targeted Wuming. However, if it was held by someone with evil intentions, it would completely become evil. Just like when Darius held the black root mud became an evil thing. It could erode servants, but other than that, it didn't have much effect on the ground, flowers, and trees. If Gideon held the black root mud, it would become a good thing because he only wanted to use the black root mud to achieve his own goals. Although it was evil in the eyes of humans, the black root mud was only used to deal with Wuming. There were no other changes. The black root mud was even simpler. It was neither good nor evil. It simply gave the black root mud to the Star Cup's consciousness. It didn't have much use at all, and it was easily destroyed by Wuming. Looking at the current situation, it was very likely that absolute evil had touched the black root mud and used the black root mud as its power to fuse with it. The amount of black root mud continued to increase, and it caught fire when it came into contact with people. It was likely that absolute evil's ability extended after fusing with the black root mud. If it's absolute evil that fused with the black root mud, I'm afraid it will come to me next. Wuming said to himself. Although he was talking to himself, it was reasonable. The black root mud and Wuming were natural enemies. After being held by others, the other party would have a strong hostility toward Wuming. Wuming had experienced this many times. Darius, the consciousness of the Star Cup, and Gideon were both good, evil, and neutral, but they all had one thing in common, which was that they were inexplicably hostile toward Wuming. As such, absolute evil, who had absorbed the black origin soil, was probably also hostile toward Wuming. However, even if he was attacked by absolute evil, Wuming wouldn't run away from it. In terms of emotions, absolute evil was an existence that could endanger Quan Ting. Since Wuming had encountered it, he would deal with it. Logically speaking, absolute evil had the black origin soil on him, and his main body was probably with absolute evil. Even if absolute evil didn't find trouble with Wu-Ming, Wu-Ming would find trouble with absolute evil. Let's find Shadora first. Wu-Ming activated his psychic power to search for Shadora. It could only be said that Wu-Ming was very lucky to find Shadora's location in an instant. At this moment, Wu-Ming sensed that Shadora was carrying a little girl from Salamandra. They were flying in a room filled with black mud and fire. The entire room was burning and couldn't come out. Shadora! Wu-Ming shouted as he flew in Shadora's direction. Lord Villo! Shadora was overjoyed when she heard Wu-Ming's voice, as if she had escaped. However, she immediately shouted at Wu-Ming, Lord Wu-Ming, be careful. Lord Varen, be careful of these flames. The flames produced by the black mud have the same properties as the black mud. Shadora knew that not long ago, one of her companions rushed into the flames to save someone because he had the fire dragon bloodline. In the end, not only did he not save the person, but he also died. Not even a trace of him was left. However, Wu-Ming wasn't afraid of this. Or rather, only Wu-Ming wasn't afraid of this. Whoosh! Wu-Ming rushed into the sea of fire that surrounded Shadora and flew to her side. Lord Villo, are you all right? Shadora was startled. The black origin soil was indeed Wu-Ming's natural enemy, but at the same time, Wu-Ming was also the natural enemy of the black origin soil. Although the black origin soil countered Wu-Ming and could deal a lot of damage to Wu-Ming, it was the same. When the black origin soil was used by an outsider, Wu-Ming was the only one who wasn't restricted. In other words, Wu-Ming who could produce origin power had a resistance to the black origin soil. Don't worry about that for now. Leave with this child first, Wu-Ming said and opened a portal. Lord Villo, please leave with us. This is the last child left in Salamandra. It was because of Shadora's continuous rescue that she couldn't escape in time. However, it was also thanks to Shadora that apart from Shadora and the little girl in her arms, there were no other living members in Salamandra. No, I still have to deal with the enemy this time. You guys leave first. Wu-Ming clearly sensed a hostile aura approaching quickly from underground. However, in Shadora's opinion, Wu-Ming chose to stay behind alone in order to cover the retreat of the people from the capital of glowing flames. Lord Villo, the seal of absolute evil under Salamandra should have been broken. However, after analyzing the previous records, the black origin soil doesn't seem to be absolute evil's ability at all. Please be careful, Shadora kindly provided Wu-Ming with information. I understand. You guys should leave first. Wu-Ming pointed at the portal again and signaled Shadora to leave quickly. Of course, he knew what was going on. After all, they were of the same origin. Yes. Yes, okay. Lord Villo, I wish you victory, Shadora said and jumped into the portal. After confirming that Shadora and the little girl in her arms reached a safe location, Wu-Ming closed the portal. Then, it's time to get down to business. Wu-Ming said and raised the divine blade of salvation in his hand high up. Then, Wu-Ming stopped moving. Then, a loon rune appeared in front of Wu-Ming out of thin air. He touched the loon with his spirit power and a piece of information was transmitted into Wu-Ming's mind. Information about absolute evil. However, before Wu-Ming could think about it, the black mire below suddenly exploded. Wu-Ming subconsciously slashed at the black mire below him. In an instant, the lightning of salvation that had been brewing on the divine blade of salvation suddenly exploded and hit a three-headed monster that had just jumped out of the ground. Roar! The monster let out an angry roar. It seemed that it was hurt by Wu-Ming's attack. It really merged. The monster seemed to have been corroded by the black mire and lost its mind. Although the monster was covered in black mire, Wu-Ming could vaguely see that its head was that of a dragon's. The information just now told Wu-Ming about absolute evil, including what its true form was. The true form of absolute evil was not a special existence. It was just an evil god that stood at the peak of evil in the fire worship sect. Three-headed demon dragon, Azidakaha, Wuming slowly said the monster's name. The monster, or Azidakaha, responded to Wuming, but with an attack. Roar! The three-headed demon dragon roared and countless black mire gushed towards Wuming like pillars of magma. Boom! The house that Wuming was in, Salamandra, exploded. Wuming flew into the sky through the hole and looked down at Azidakaha with the divine blade of salvation raised high. Divine blade of salvation, release your brilliance.